Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special I Dare You to Watch This episode of Monster Party.
Monster Party.
Monster Party.
A Monster Party.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. And
Okay.
let's
Enough
start.
of the sound. Enough of the sound effects. Okay.
Okay, all right.
Because I'm excited about this.
I'm very
Yeah.
excited. We did sort of a pre-test of this episode.
That's
and that
right.
could have almost have been an episode. Like
And
it was that great.
Yes. Speaking of pre-tests, who are you, sir?
That makes no sense whatsoever, but okay. I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm SHAWN SHERIDAN.
I'm Larry Stroth.
And I'm James Gonis.
Hey, way to jump in there.
Hey, but he sounds great, doesn't he?
He does.
Yay!
Yay! We finally worked out some of the bugs. I don't want to jinx this, but I think
Yeah.
I think
So
it's going to go well.
So we're still in isolation.
We're still
Yes,
in isolation. We're still doing the Zoom thing. So this is a good topic for a quarantine because we're going to bring up a whole bunch of movies that I'm sure a lot of you have never even heard of.
Mhm.
And so now you can go and look online or wherever and find a mail order place, or I don't know where you're going to get your videos from, but now you'll have a mission. You can go out and look for some crazy movies. And so now I'm going to introduce the title of this topic to put it all in context.
What is this amazing topic?
The topic is Attack of the Killer Cult Films.
Attack of the Killer Cult Film.
Attack of the Killer Cult Films. They're killer. They're cult.
They're cult.
Films. What more do you need?
Now
Yes.
it doesn't necessarily mean that it has killing in the cult film.
But it probably does.
No,
Some
well,
do.
Most likely.
Well,
these
Yeah.
are considered cult films.
Yeah,
Yeah,
films, on the fringe that, have developed followings.
Yes,
Right.
and fringe means a lot of things. It could be a film that was very low budget that didn't get a wide distribution, or it could also mean that it was a film that was maybe popular in a certain country,
Yeah.
but us in the US or, the European Union, we're not familiar with these movies.
No, or maybe when it came out, maybe it was somewhat popular, but over time, it kind of dissipated with all of the other films, but then slowly but surely it's developed a following. People
Or
are
it was
obsessed with it.
not a popular film
Yes.
and managed to become
Right.
popular over the years.
Right.
But okay,
And-
we've put this now in context.
Yes.
And so now I'm going to turn it over to James. James,
Yes.
we have a truly amazing guest.
yes, and this really is the perfect guest for this topic. And he's one of my oldest friends. He's written about film for a wide range of books, magazines, and websites, including Films and Review, Videoscope, Psychotronic, DiscDish.com, and Time.com.
Time.
Wow.
He was previously a staff writer for TV Guide and managing editor of Movies on TV. Remember those thick paperbacks?
Oh, I
before-
do.
yeah.
Yes, I
love
do.
TV Guide. I love
And he also
Good times.
edited the reference book, The Motion Picture Guide Annual. For 27 years, he's produced and hosted his own weekly cable show, Media Funhouse,
Media
covering-
Funhouse.
covering everything from high art to low trash in New York
And he's-
City.
Yeah, and he's interviewed a million people, right? Like,
Yeah,
And he
lots
has
of
for the
cult
show.
filmmakers and actors and actresses.
Right. And I served as his cameraman for many of these,
Yes,
like at the
yes.
Chiller Show in Jersey.
Yes.
No
Wow.
way.
And through the show, he's received a ton of fan mail from the likes of Jim Jarmusch, Art Spiegelman,
wow.
and the Time magazine critic Richard Corliss, who covered the show in Time, calling it the most eclectic and useful movie show on TV. Guys, let's welcome Ed Grant.
Ed Grant.
Ed,
Very much.
Ed
Thank you.
Grant.
Thank you
Ed.
very
for
much.
being with
I will
us.
say
Welcome,
Spiegelman never wrote in. He just told Jarmusch about it. I was asking Jarmusch, like he
Oh.
wrote to me. I said, how did you hear about my show? And he said, Art Spiegelman told me at a party. So I was like, oh,
Wow.
okay.
Well, that's
So
pretty
I never
cool.
heard from Spiegelman, but he told the other guy. And it's like, thank you.
Well, Ed, thanks for being honest.
Thank you guys. I'm a fan
Yeah.
of your show. I love your show and the covering of the different topics. You jump around to different topics.
Oh, yes,
So
we do.
Yeah.
And I think today we won't be as
Sometimes
monster.
not on purpose.
Yeah, I feel the only thing thing that I lack is that I may not be as monsterific as you normally are. That I'm sort of going to go maybe
you'll
comedy.
be fine.
I'll
no,
be going.
we got that covered. And
Okay.
what you will do is you will fill in the gaps that we
Okay.
leave.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So I'm looking forward to it.
I think it'd be a good idea if maybe, Ed, you start this off with a film or a series of films or anything you want to suggest that fits our lovely topic.
Let's pull the ripcord and let's go.
Yeah, let's jump.
for it.
Throw yourself in front of that train.
I've done a bunch of on the show. I should explain. I do this public access show in Manhattan. It's been on for, as Jim said, 27. It'll be 27 this October. 27 years. And what I try to do is from high art to low trash and back again. So I'll do very schlocky grindhouse films and I'll do art house films. And when people have asked me what is the connection between the two, it's unpredictability. Whenever I have to try to explain it, I say Jean-Luc Godard is completely unpredictable. You never know what he's going to do. And Russ Meyer or Ted B. Michaels. So they're not alike. And other times they'll use even tricks that Godard will do something that was in, I swear to God, in his 3D movie. He did something that Phil Tucker did in Robot Monster, I swear. It's just that Godard did it on purpose. Phil Tucker did it by mistake. So
What was that thing?
It was in the Adieu au langage, Goodbye to Language by Godard. He actually does a thing where a character goes away, and it's like it goes 3D, and your eye goes, oh my God, like it hurts your eyes because you're seeing two different things on two different, and he knows it can only sustain for about 10, 15 seconds, or maybe even 5 to 10. You'll go blind if you're watching. Phil Tucker, when they showed it at Film Forum in 3D, Robot Monster, Bruce Goldstein, the curator, amazing work. He got up and said, by the way, you're going to see something that's not going to make any sense, but you're going to see dinosaur footage at the beginning. Now, this version we're showing has two different things on your eye at one point, and Phil Tucker made it last longer than Godard did. Godard uses it as an effect, like a character walks this way, and he did a 3D effect whereby the 3D breaks, and the left camera goes this way, the left visual information goes that way, and this stays, and then he makes the person rejoin because he knew, I got to do this quickly, and he did it again later in the film to show, hey, that was so much fun, me doing it, let me do it again. Phil Tucker, when you're seeing the dinosaur footage before you've even encountered the gorilla and the diving suit, there's bad stock footage from whatever, the Lost World.
Sure.
And it's different footage on each eye. That one went on for about 10 seconds or something. So we were prepared that you don't go, close your eyes if it hurts your eyes or something, because basically.
Weird.
I think that's what created. I think that's what created coronavirus.
I think
COVID-19.
Origin.
That is what does it.
Yeah.
So over the years I did 2 episodes on the guide. I'm going to get to a person here in a second. I just want to say, like, when I was asked one time, can you link the two together? I did 2 episodes on the cinematographer Gary Graver, because Gary Graver worked in both fields simultaneously in LA. He was filming, I think it was Al Adamson films for years.
Yeah.
He made his own hardcore sex films.
I was just about to say, I remember that name from porn.
He's a porn director, and he also did that. Well, he did that, and he worked with Fred Olin Ray a lot, and he did his own things for, like, Triborough, one of my favorite defunct home video outlets. But at the same time, when he was free to do what he wanted to, he shot parts of Woman Under the Influence, The Other Side of the Wind, F for Fake. He was working with Orson and Cassavetes when he could do what he wanted to do. Wow. And there's the famous story of how Orson might or might not have edited a Vanessa Del Rio scene in a porn film.
I heard about
Yeah,
that. I heard that.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is that
not?
it's shot like it's Orson. So I wonder about that story. Was it Gary Graver initially shooting the film from high and low angles? Because when I've seen parts of the scene, I think it was on the internet at some point, I saw part of it, and it looks like Orson's oblique angles, up, down, up, down. So if that was just in the editing, he would have had to have had, I think what I'm saying here is, because if you see Other Side of the Wind, there's all these scenes that are pretty pornographic. They lead to pornography.
After the cum shot, did someone stand up and then start applauding?
Ed, wasn't my
in
understanding?
3D.
And Ed, my understanding was it was like a tit for tat. It was kind of a trade-off.
Yes, exactly. That's
Orson Welles needed
Good phrase you're using there, Larry.
No, okay.
Very good, actually.
Orson Welles needed some help, whether it be editing or cinematography or something, and so he did a trade-off.
Right.
Now that's the story. You don't know if it's actually true.
Well, because there's stuff in Other Side of the Wind, and that links to even another person. I did 2 episodes about Graver doing the low trash and then doing the high art. But also there's that guy Bob Murawski who put together the unbelievably ridiculous Gone with the Pope that's Grindhouse Releasing has put out on Blu-ray by Duke Mitchell. But he also edited Other Side of the Wind, and I think one was the demo for the other because he did such an immaculate job with Gone with the Pope. He also won the Oscar for The Hurt Locker. But on the fact that he did this insane creation of a film that Duke Mitchell didn't even finish, it's got 3 different plots.
Please tell our audience
Sure.
who Duke Mitchell is?
Yeah.
Yes, you should always stop me. Please do that, because on the show I tend to give a lot of background, and here I might just be dropping in media res stuff.
No, we love it.
Duke Mitchell
go for it.
was a lounge singer who, for years and years, was like considered the mayor of one little town because he was always working. But his biggest moment of fame was working with Sammy Petrillo as an ersatz Martin Lewis in
Right.
Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla.
That's
by
right.
One Shot Boating. It's an amazing film where they literally, the other guy is a dupe for Jerry. He seems like he is Jerry Lewis, Sammy Petrillo.
Yes,
Yeah.
he is.
Duke Mitchell really isn't Dean Martin.
No.
But it turns out he had a fixation on Dean Martin and would sing his songs. And this is in both movies that Duke made. And the guys at Grindhouse Releasing, who do an immaculate job, they did Massacre Mafia Style? It's called Massacre Mafia Style, which was The Executioner, which I found thanks to, and we have to credit people here, Jose Kane, the fan of the movies, wrote a column in the Daily News.
I have his book. His book is great.
Joe Kane, I can't say enough things about his writing and how he was into it. And what he would do is go to Times Square and just pick things up in the porn stores that weren't porn. He would go to the stores that were having closeouts. You know, there was one on 17th Street. And he would just go in and he discovered for me a handful of amazing things that were on the show. And I would always try to credit him if I could. He found The Executioner, Duke Mitchell's first movie. And now the guys at Grindhouse, they literally took the other movie because the Sun had the footage, and Bob Murawski made a movie out of it. And it's literally, you can see what he did with computers to try to fuzz out things and put things in focus, because Duke wasn't really in focus a lot of times. And then he went on to do The Other Side of the Wind. So he went from working on an absolute piece of schlock to then doing the premiere, creation of Orson's Life that he worked on for 7 years.
Wow.
And never finished.
That's incredible.
So it's sort of that thing. So I guess to do my quickie here on the lady I've done on the show 3 times or 4 times, this woman named Karen Arthur is a fixation for me, because she did TV work. You might know, like if you look on IMDb, she did Seventh Heaven, very wholesome kind of things. But she made an independent film that no one I know has ever seen called Legacy, but Mafu Cage, which does fit in with your horror topic.
Oh, yes.
Have you seen it? Anybody seen this?
It just came out on Blu-ray, right?
Oh, it's kind of, yes, they've restored it.
Of
yes.
course, right?
I know it. Lee Grant and Carol Kane, right?
Yes, Carol Kane and Lee Grant play lesbian sisters. It is based
Hold
on
on,
a French
wait a minute.
play. Yes, it's well, there's no lesbian. It's young, adorable, absolutely adorable Carol Kane. And
I'm in.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
right
yes.
after Hester Street, around that vicinity. And it's them. It was based on a French play called Nuage, The Clouds. And it's about the daughters in the play, I guess he was French, he's American in the movie, a dead father who was an anthropologist who brought back African artifacts to their house. And what Lee Grant has to do for her sister, who is crazy, is buy her gorillas or chimps of some kind called mafus. Then Carol Kane takes them, loves them, plays with them, then gets tired of them, kills them, and bathes in their blood. So there's all these scenes of her bathing in their blood. So
Wow.
Carol, as the film,
horrible.
that's well, it doesn't. You don't literally see. You hear a monkey off screen, or you hear a man in a monkey suit going
You don't see a little monkey head
No,
roll through a door.
they don't get that graphic. But it's that Will Geer is the purveyor of the monkeys, and at one point, Will Geer from the Waltons and the man who was blacklisted.
Wait, is it
Oh my
monkey?
gosh.
Is it monkeys or chimps?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly which simian species she's
they have
taking. What is a
tails?
mafu? I don't remember, to be honest. I'd have to look back at the film. But it's sort of like this thing where Will Geer is the purveyor, and he's got mafus. So Lee Grant keeps having to go, can I buy another one for my sister? And he goes, no, she killed the There's literally these odd, surreal discussions where Will Geer is like, I don't think so. You don't treat them very nice. And then she gets a boyfriend, Lee Grant, and we kind of know the boyfriend is going to be tied. It's going to be the same fate that befell the mafus. So
Ain't it always the way?
Yeah.
Aren't you always paying for the monkey's indiscretions?
It's a weird career, because she then goes into TV movies. She is known for The Rape of Richard Beck, the Richard Crenna movie where he's raped, the Jackson's life story about the Jackson family, the Teresa Saldana movie, which is unnecessarily gory. If you want to talk about a TV movie from whatever era it was, the 80s, 90s, where she literally, we watch her get stabbed. We see it from her POV, and she crawls across the street, and it's Teresa Saldana playing Teresa Saldana. But the one I wanted to bring up, the two I want to bring up, one is a theatrical, one is a TV movie, Lady Beware with Diane Lane, which shows up on the internet.
Beware.
It's only on VHS. There are rumors that Diane Lane is embarrassed by it because she's nude, and there were rumors she's underage, which she's not, because she's around
She should be proud.
She's in her 20s in this movie. This is right
just
around
sold 4 videos.
Streets of Fire. Yeah. If you want to know which generation of Diane Lane, it's Streets of Fire Diane Lane. So she's fully in adult.
I'm
generation of Diane Lane.
I'm going to run out of here like a puff of smoke.
It's really, I could make you a copy of these things. What it is,
yes, please.
Yes,
it's floating around as a VHS dub because the VHS was from IVE Live. I used to review, I should say, as part of my history, I reviewed for that Scheuer book, Movies on TV, all of these straight to videos, and then I did that for TV Guide. So I encountered a lot of Shannon Tweed and Jeff Fahey, a lot of movies that I wouldn't even
Body Chemistry.
Yes, exactly. I would
Body Chemistry 2.
Nice,
I would not sully the Monster Party with mentions of those movies, Don the Dragon Wilson, But Lady Beware is her as Diane Lane is playing a very adventurous window dresser who is expressing her erotic fantasies in a very rinse dream-like way. It has the look of the Cafe Flesh, that kind of LA art student look, even though it's shot in Pittsburgh. And it's got a guy from the Mr. Rogers. It's got Chef Brockett, I think. Yeah, Don Brockett was big in Pittsburgh theater, so he's in the movie. Wow. And he's playing this gay guy who puts gates on her windows because the stalker is an X-ray technician, the guy who falls in love with her because he sees her erotic window dressings in a local department store. And he begins to stalk her. And the whole movie for, let's say, an hour of the hour and a half is her being humiliated and creeped out and weirded out. So it's one of those very sexist movies. But this last half an hour is the revenge part. It's where she finally gets revenge over him. Right. She puts up pictures of him where his wife and kids are. She calls his wife. She does all these. So it becomes feminist in the final third, even though we've watched it.
That's revenge good. That's good. Yeah.
I don't know if James, did you see it with me in New York? Because
I don't. No, I do not remember seeing.
I saw it with a few of our mutual friends, and we were guys, and we were laughing, but we were like, "This is not appropriate for us to laugh. This is us as young PC guys. Is it okay if we laugh at a guy being creepy to a woman? Should we laugh at this?" And then the laughter began from the female audience members, and we realized they found it hysterically funny, and we were allowed to laugh at the part where she's because there's a scene where he climbs into her house while she's away with her beloved boyfriend, and he gets into her bathtub, then gets out, puts a towel on, and dances for a while. And he does a crazy dance. This was done by Scotty Brothers Records. They had like a bunch of bands at one time. They had 2 or 3 hits. Weird Al Yankovic had a record on Scotty Brothers Records. So there's a weird scene where he, in her towel, dances around her apartment, which is kind of an insane moment where the women in the audience began to laugh. So
choreographed by Bob Fosse.
It's a very strange film because then, the end is the feminism, whatever. She also made, and I took 2 episodes to do this, and I think you can find the edited version on YouTube. A lot of these are sort of in pieces on YouTube or Daily Motion, or I could give at the end a list of the different websites if we want to do that. Love and Betrayal, the Mia Farrow story, is a TV.
Wait, it's called no. It's called the Mia Farrow story.
Yes, it's called the Love and Betrayal: because it was based on 2 books, one written by the nursemaid and one that was just a profile, one of those Morella Epstein stories of Mia's life, because we start with her and John Farrow and her mother, Marina Sullivan. So we go to Woody. The thing is, what Karen Arthur decided to do, or the scripter, and then Karen Arthur enacted it, is to make the movie a series of Woody Allen, when she's in the Woody Allen mode, series of scenes from Woody Allen's films. So they go to Sutton Place and they sit on a bench in the moonlight. There's a scene where they eat Chinese food and edit, like Crimes and Misdemeanors. There's all these moments that Woody Allen fans will remember from Woody Allen films, but this is supposed to be Woody himself, played by Dennis Boutsikaris, who plays it dead seriously, except doing a little bit of a Woody impression, and Patsy Kensit, the British actress who had played Mia's daughter.
Yes, yeah.
She plays her, and she's absolutely more adorable. And so we reenact these skewers through the heart, all the moments, the famous moments of the Woody Allen breakup. Supposedly the European version, which I've never seen, has the Sunyi actress doing lots of nudity. That's not in the version I saw. This is the version you could see. But there is one cut that I just made an obsession about. There is a moment where Karen Arthur has a scene in which she's talking to her Charlie Brown. Maria Farrow used to refer to Frank Sinatra as Charlie Brown because he had the big bald head and he only wore a partial tube at that time. And there's a scene where she's having a disagreement with him and they run in from a pool or something. Sinatra comes down. I'm actually doing this like we're talking in a visual show. I do hand gestures. I have Italian background, so I do hand gestures. There's a moment where Sinatra's about to descend on her to have sex with her, and suddenly we cut to the devil and we realize we're on the set of Rosemary's Baby. So Frank becomes the devil. Dissolved.
Nice.
Yeah, he comes down and suddenly you hear a guy playing Roman Polanski going, "That's good, Mia. Oh, you're scared. Okay. And then we realize we're now on the set of Rosemary's Baby.
That's cool, because wasn't that her participation in that movie was part of their divorce,
the marriage. Right? Exactly.
And that haircut.
Yes.
That he hated that haircut.
Yes. She got the,
it made her look kind of little
boyish.
Yeah.
And Ava Gardner had the famous quote, "I always knew he'd end up with a boy." That was her quote about Mia Farrow when she cut the hair. Because she had and there are things in the movie that really occurred. So a lot of it is based because it's based on the nursemaid's story, the nanny. And there's a moment where the little blind child, who I think was called Lark, unfortunately, a lot of these kids have committed suicide. There's a lot of tangles to that story we won't get into now. But her thing was whenever Woody would come to that house on the West Side, she'd go, "Woody, no goody. Woody, no goody." So we see a child saying that. And there's also an amazing scene, which really did happen with Boutsikaris doing Woody, where he was asked, "Did you call your son," now named Ronan, formerly Satchel, "did you call him a little bastard on the stand?" This was at the trial. And he said, "Well, technically, he really is a little bit." And that actually occurred, and it got a big laugh from the audience in the courtroom because Woody reverted back to his comedic persona and said, "Well, technically, he is a bastard, because he never married Mia." So they act out things that you'd only read about, including a supposed affair with Diane Weiss that I never heard about in the New York papers. That supposedly he was cheating.
With Woody?
With Woody. At one point, Patsy Kensit is Mia.
While making Hannah and Her Sisters?
Something like that. There's a moment in the film where I'm like, wait, I never heard that. Because everything else in the film, oddly enough, is actually pretty factual or pretty much, I guess they didn't want to stray too much. So they just act out the stuff we really know in all these real New York locations. But at one point, she accuses him of that. She says something like, "And you've been having sex with Diane Weiss, or you guys have been meeting." And it's like, I never heard that. So that's something weird the nursemaid knew. But it's weird because I keep wanting to call her Diane Arthur, Karen Arthur's films, they are thrillers. In that one, there's the famous moment where she tries to kill herself in a bathtub. Patsy Kensit is Mia, and we also see the skewers. She sent Woody a Valentine, which they talked about on 60 Minutes when he was interviewed after the whole thing was over, where she took a family photo and put skewers, like little skewers you'd use to make kebab or something, in the hearts of each.
For like corn? For like corn things?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And she put them in each person's heart, but there was a giant, butcher knife, like a cake knife in her heart and Mia's. And they have Dennis Boutsikaris open this, and it's like, it's like literally this moment where
that's messed up.
And it really did happen. That's actually 100% true. It's because he said it in court. He says, "I received this package that was in a cake box." And what it was a photo with hundreds of little pierced skewers and one giant carving knife in it. So that basically, so I can relate it to the horror. I know I'm taking you guys way afield out of your topic.
That whole household must have been just a maelstrom of crazy.
But this is great. I love hearing about the Mia Farrow story, but I'd like to get back to cult films,
Oh, yes.
That is a cult film.
Yeah, and I just want to say that the Mafu Cage is one that I've always heard about.
Yes, that's a cult film. Yeah.
Is it good? Is it a good film?
It's a fun, I don't know, because it points, I'm trying to be kind and generous because I do think the woman had talent, Karen Arthur. It's kitschy. It's campy, not intentionally so, though, because there is Carol King, "I want a Mafu, can't you get me a Mafu?" It's Carol Kane doing her voice, which is a lovely voice. But Lee Grant is very intense. Lee Grant, because she's always method Lee Grant. But the thing is, as you watch it and you begin to say, wait a second, she's killing the monkeys and bathing them. Like, it's sort of one of those movies where you have to just take it on its face and go, okay.
And it's never explained why she's bathing.
I think it's some sort of to be closer to daddy. It's all about daddy fixation, that she's got an Oedipal complex. And the only person she could actually love, Carol Kane, is Lee. And they are seen in a hammock or something at one point. So the intimate, because on video, they didn't know how to release it on video. So it was the Mafu Cage. Then it came out as My Sister, My Love. It had different titles over the years.
And the Sex Hammock, I believe.
So
that is
Mafu.
Yes. That's my nomination, so you can...
that's a good one.
I just thought that she's such an unusual director, and she's still alive. She's, I believe, in her 70s or possibly 80s. I assume she teaches, but her later career is very wholesome TV, like Seventh Heaven, which was the Christian show about the family.
Sure,
so she went from doing these... Even the Jacksons movie has a lot of the beating of the Jacksons kid. As I said, the Teresa Saldana movie. So her movies are harder edged. They're very... The Teresa Saldana thing, literally that moment for like the 5 minutes that you watch a woman crawling on the ground from her POV is really horrifying. So it does fit into a horror sort of sensibility, or so that's my
James?
Nomination.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Mia film?
I have, years ago when it was first out. Yeah.
And how did that affect you? Did they recreate an interiors moment?
No, I think that was before Mia's time, but no, I just kept looking at Woody and saying, "Wow, that guy's Greek. He doesn't seem Greek. I don't see the connection."
I
He
want
was
to
a
see
soap
this
opera
now.
actor, I think.
Yeah.
I think he was a soap opera actor, Dennis Boutsikaris. I think that's what he had done previously. He was, you know.
And I don't think he's done anything since.
I know.
Yeah.
And Patsy Kensit has sort of faded too. She was dating one guy, or married and had kids from one guy from, not Blur, but Oasis. Wasn't she with one of the Gallagher brothers or something? She became more famous in England, not for her acting, but because she was involved with a Britpop guy or something. But,
So this guy who played Woody Allen, in a way, he's sort of the Sammy Petrillo.
hey, there you go. Good callback. Good callback. There you go. Yeah.
Trying to, keep this thing together.
Very good.
Sammy
very good.
Petrillo, is that the Jerry Lewis
Jerry
guy?
Lewis guy, yeah.
From Bela Lugosi meets the Brooklyn Gorilla. Yeah.
Oh.
Classic.
So those are mine. So I'm
That's
sure
great.
you have some goodies. So
Hey, Sean, you're usually pretty good with some cult films. Why don't you throw some at us?
Okay, this one is a truly bizarre film. I would say definitely a cult film. It would probably fall under the Nazi exploitation category. It's a pretty infamous film, actually, from 1974 called The Night Porter.
Oh, yes.
Night
Porter.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Night Porter is a
Movie.
bizarre, twisted movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
This
it is.
movie, it's quite compelling. And this movie is directed by a woman, Liliana Cavani, and this movie stars Dirk Bogarde, Charlotte Rampling, and basically it takes place in like the 50s. It's after World War II, and Dirk Bogarde is a former Nazi officer, or actually he was more like a photographer. He would take all these pictures of the concentration camp victims, during the time. And
It's like a record kind of a thing? Or,
right. A record of all their experiments and all that.
Right.
And while he was doing that, he was just obsessed with this one particular prisoner in the camp, this young, beautiful woman played by Charlotte Rampling.
Oh.
But they developed this weird kind of psychological, like sexual relationship. Like he becomes obsessed with her. She's, has malnutrition and she's in a concentration camp, but he just kind of tortures her and plays mind games with her, but also kind of physically having sex with her, but she kind of goes along with it. And
doesn't she get invited? Like he invites her to like little soirees that they put on. And
well, there's this kind of famous scene where, all the Nazi officers are sitting around and she's performing this dance with them. She's like topless, wearing this Nazi officer's hat and doing this. It's like a Marlene Dietrich song or something, I think that she's doing. And she's singing the song. And so it's a super twisted relationship that happens. And she survives the camp. And it's now like in the 50s. And Dirk Bogarde is like a night porter at a hotel. And she happens to be, she's now, Charlotte Rampling's character is staying at the hotel with her now husband. And they see each other and recognize each other. And there's this kind of unstated thing. The thing is that it's like she has what they call Stockholm syndrome.
Right. Yes.
When concentration camp victims were so tortured and controlled by their captors that they identified with them. And if they survived the ordeal, they couldn't do without it. They wanted it. They kind of like were enjoying the torture and
she gets into this sadomasochistic relationship with them.
So it's like
post World War II.
Right. It's very bizarre, and her husband has to go and leave the hotel for some business. So they start up their relationship again. They just locks her in one of the hotel rooms, and they just have this bizarre courting thing going on. Meanwhile, Dirk Bogarde's other fellow SS officers who are now in hiding, who survived from all their Nazi crimes, they're telling him, "Hey, what are you doing?
Don't do this." Yeah,
we're trying to track down all the witnesses from our past, and we're trying to get rid of them. So what do you So it's this whole thing.
He's protecting her.
Yeah, but he's also going nuts, and so is Charlotte Rampling, and it's quite twisted, but it's really uncomfortable at times, but it's really compelling and very well acted.
Yeah, I think it's a good movie. It's not one that is universally well reviewed.
No, it's polarizing actually. At the time, a lot of critics, a lot of well-known critics thought it was just called a complete trash. Now it's kind of regarded in a lot of ways as really, and I think it's
compelling as well.
I think it borderlines on both. It's kind of like what Ed was saying. It's high art and low trash at the same time.
Yes, yeah.
I think on the Criterion they had to literally get like a pro and a minus voice, like they did for Straw Dogs. When Criterion puts these out, they definitely have to go to one feminist who says, one voice that says this is a very good movie, and then other thing people say, well, this is trash or something like that.
Right.
Interesting, because Cavani made other very politically charged movies, and it's a great movie. It really is.
And Dirk Bogarde is always
he's always
what he's in. He's so fantastic. And Charlotte Rampling, you see a lot of Charlotte Rampling in this film.
Yes.
It's a very bold performance.
Yes,
but she's fantastic. And it's really fascinating. It's kind of icky, but it's kind of like really, but it's
I like it too.
at the same time. It's unlike any movie I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Charlotte Rampling did that 8 movie, right?
Max Mon Amour.
Max Mon Amour.
Oh yeah.
Oshima, one of her lower moments. It's not one of her best regarded moments, but
I've never seen that. Is that worth seeing?
Yeah, I've never seen it either.
It's fun, bad, but just because of the talent. We spoke about it the other day. It's Nagisa Oshima from a script by Jean-Claude Carrière, who worked with Buñuel, he worked with Polanski, he worked with this guy and that guy and the other, but it's really kind of a goofy movie. It's weird. It's like a live-action Disney film.
A woman falls in love.
She's having a romantic relationship
with a chimp.
Yes, with the chimp. She's a British diplomat's wife in Paris. It all takes place in Paris. Yeah.
Wow, so it's a good double feature with Tanya's Island.
Yes. I forgot about that. Wow, nice.
That's right.
That's a nice obscurity.
Well, talking about the Nazi stuff, subgenre.
Right.
Yeah.
Mostly made by
probably one of the most popular titles that people will think of when they go to this is like, Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS.
Sure. The series of films. Yeah.
And they did a lot of Ilsa films. And if you could shed any kind of light on the popularity and how those films even came about, where someone would go, hey, I got an idea.
Well, the weird thing was, I think a lot of them were made by Jews, so they were sort of like Dave Friedman had a hand in one or two. There's Bob Cressy, I think, did the Love Camp #7, the big one, because these are the sleazier ones. Even Ilsa,
Right.
Like the second Ilsa is that one where I saw it near Octopussy, and I realized they're almost the same movie except they're topless.
Is that like
Ilsa,
the Oil Sheiks,
harem keeper of the Oil Sheiks, is basically Octopussy, but with breasts, with topless women or something. But yeah, Dirk Bogarde. Just to return to Dirk Bogarde, his career is fucking amazing because he basically is the faded aristocrat. He had those roles in those Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And there's a Losey called The Servant by Harold Pinter.
The Servant. I love The Servant.
Oh, it's unbelievably good. Yeah, it's a really good, master and servant. It literally is a master and servant relationship. Mm-hmm. So he made those movies, and he was an incredible faded aristocrat in all those movies. Like slowly, he's in Death in Venice, pining for the young man and dying.
Even in the cartoonish Modesty Blaze, he plays villain.
That's Joseph Losey.
Really flamboyant and really, really fun.
Yeah. He had an amazing career where he had been a comedy guy. He was sort of, I believe in life, he was bisexual, whatever, it didn't matter. But yeah, he played in these amazing films. Usually, I was saying years ago when Jeremy Irons had that career that he got Dirk Bogarde's career when Dirk Bogarde died because he played all these aristocrats and guys with kinks and stuff. It's sort of like, he inherited the mantle of Dirk Bogarde once he was gone.
Now, Dirk Bogarde is, I would say, a good representation of often high art. He's a genuinely respected, great actor. Yeah. I'm going to throw in an actor who is, I'm sure, not very well known by most people, but gives a performance that I think is pretty incredible considering how small this film is. And I'm going to bring up Arch Hall Jr.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh, yeah, okay.
There's a movie called The Sadist.
Ah, yes, okay.
Also known as Profile of Terror and Sweet Baby Charlie, 1963.
Yes.
And written and directed by James Landis. I don't think there's any relation, is there?
I don't believe so, yeah.
But anyway, the story is there are these 3 high school teachers, and they're driving through California, and something goes wrong with their car. So they pull over to this gas station that's kind of like also a junkyard, and they're looking around for someone to help them, but there's nobody around. And while they're there, they come upon this couple, and they're bad news, this couple. And you've got this guy, Charlie, and that's Arch Hall Jr., and he is just a monster. And the performance that he gives is basic, but it's also very chilling and raw. And I remember watching this movie, and as I'm watching it, I'm like, boy, this guy's really scary. And I think it's a movie that doesn't get enough attention.
It's kind of a Charlie Starkweather vibe too, isn't there supposed to be?
Yes,
that was everybody in everybody's mind at that time. This is, I think, early '60s, and Charlie Starkweather's like late '50s. But there's still that fear in America that your daughter is going to be taken away by Charlie. Carol Fugate, the cheerleader, the Badlands story, is going to be taken away. So I think they sort of ripped off I think that was part of that whole idea that that's a Charlie Starkweather.
I'm sure, yeah. But he's great, and then his girlfriend Judy is also pretty creepy. But he really steals the show. I mean, he he is just a monster. And there's another movie. Sean, do you remember the other Archal?
Wild Guitar?
Wild Guitar. That's right.
Yeah. Oh my God.
He's a rock and roller. And it's
that's a Steckler film too. Right.
And so what I just loved about The Sadist is, like, I saw Wild Guitar first.
Right.
So I see him as this kind of, relatively likable rock and roller guy. And then I watched The Sadist. I'm like, holy fuck, this guy has some range.
Yeah.
And so, that's one that if you've never seen it, it's certainly
The Sadist. The Sadist.
The Sadist.
From 63.
Yes.
Is this something that I would like, Matt?
You might actually, because it's not overly. It's violent, but it's not. It's
no Human Centipede.
It's no Human Centipede. The Sadist is not sewn to a number of other sadists.
I don't know either.
Okay.
Yeah, I would.
Well, speaking
I
of
would like to
Centipede,
see that movie.
Which one?
The Human Centisadist.
Okay. Well, let me just bring up a cult film here. This doesn't have any centipedes in it. But as you guys know, for years and years, I thought when I was growing up, I thought I'd be an animator. When I went to college, I enrolled in the film classes, but also my emphasis was in animation. And one of the great classes I took was a history of animation. I got to learn all about these great animated films, throughout the ages. And I didn't realize it, but the National Film Board of Canada has really been known for cranking out some amazing animated work. And there was a time in the 70s, we all think of Walt Disney and Disney Studios as winning the Academy Awards for animated short. Well, there was a time when they kind of dominated. Then Warner Brothers took over. Then in the 70s, it was the National Film Board of Canada. And one of the things they did is the National Film Board of Canada actually gives money to animators to make films for their country. And a lot of the times they ask, try to do something in such a way that can give information to people, that it's entertaining. And there's a cult classic film that is so incredibly funny, made by this guy named Richard Conde. And Richard Conde is known for making a couple films. I want to put them together, and I'll tell you why they're known as cult films. He did this film in 1981 called Pig Bird. And I don't know if it's
delicious.
So, yes. Now, Pig Bird is actually, what's great about Conde's work is he would try to do stuff where there isn't any dialogue. It's more like these funky animated characters that kind of just, they'll open their mouth, go, rah, rah, and kind of like a Charlie Brown, the adult, wah, 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 wah.
Sure.
But you can tell what's happening. And basically, this Pig Bird tells the story of a guy who's trying to smuggle in an animal from another country into their country. And there's a reason why they have these rules as to not to bring animals from another country. So this guy tries to smuggle in Pig Bird. And what actually happens is so funny and twisted and disgusting. And it's absolutely wonderful. And it's a
stop
great
motion?
No. It's all animated. Cell animated.
Cell animation. Okay.
And what's great is I can tell the listeners that you can actually go on YouTube and find it, Pig Bird by Richard Conde.
Is it more, Larry? Is it more like aimed for adults though?
Yes, totally. Okay. Well, that's the funny thing. It is aimed at adults, but kids can enjoy it too, and it's not very long. But it's so great and it's so funny. And the reason why I reached cult status is because when it was initially brought out, it was kind of like a PSA in a way. But when you see it, you'll understand why it developed a cult following. And along those lines, Conde also did a follow-up. There was a film that he did in 1985 called The Big Snit. Now, this was...
Oh, yeah, I love that one.
Yes. This was actually nominated for an Academy Award.
Yes.
It didn't win, but people have to remember that in the 80s, there was a big Cold War thing between the United States and Russia. And this was kind of Canada's or Conde's suggestion as to how, hey, can't we all get along kind of a thing, and how ridiculous.
Fucking Canadians.
Well, no, it's if you haven't seen this, you can also find this on YouTube called The Big Snit. It's basically a husband and wife who get in an argument over something.
Just a bickering old couple.
Okay.
Incredibly stupid. And
It's
how
so
many
funny.
and how often? I mean, we're all we all have mates. There are times when you get angry at someone for something
Wait
so
a minute.
incredibly
What?
stupid.
How dare you?
No. But The Big Snit, Richard Conde. I don't want to give away the ending.
It's very stylized though with the cartoon. Like they're very like the woman has the weird thing where she has these googly
Shake
eyes.
her eyes.
And she kind of takes off her eyes and shakes them. He's always going, you're always shaking your eyes.
That's Condi's style. If you look at his work, and also the guys have these giant teeth, these funky
huge
teeth.
Buck teeth.
And they're so great. So the Big Snit, it does have there is a story. It is English, and of course you guys can follow it. Pig Bird is great. Good. It's such a great way to convey an idea without using dialogue.
Yeah.
Really similar themed, I would also suggest the Ramones video, Merry Christmas, I Don't Want to Fight.
Oh, yeah.
Which has a couple arguing, and then they are helped by the Ramones.
Yeah, of course.
The power of music.
The Ramones can solve all domestic squabbles.
Yes, they can. At least for a minute or two.
Matt, now I understand why you like the Ramones so much.
One of many reasons.
There's a couple little animated cult classics.
I love those. I don't think I've seen either of them, and I will go and check them out.
Yeah.
You know what's great, Matt, is neither one is very long. The Pig Bird's 3 minutes. Like the other one's like 7 minutes. I think. Oh, wow. And I think you'll really enjoy them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. How about you, James?
Well, I got one that I saw a long time ago, but I was really glad I saw it when I did. And this is years before Lord of the Rings. In 1989, Peter Jackson made a movie that was basically his take on the Muppets.
Yeah.
Meet the Feebles.
Right.
Talk about a cult film.
Meet the Feebles is great.
Now,
talk about a movie that holds up. I love that thing.
and it is basically almost a straight-on parody of the Muppets in the sense that this is a troupe of, puppets that look a lot like Muppets. That are a lot of them are kind of look like animals, like the Miss Piggy instead is a hippopotamus woman named Heidi. And there's a hedgehog and a walrus and a poodle and a frog and a chicken.
A fly.
And a fly. Yeah. And whereas all the Muppet behavior and interaction is usually pretty positive, these are all disgusting characters. They're horrible, greedy, vindictive, lecherous.
One of them has flashbacks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Drug addicts.
Right.
And
there's a song about sodomy, right?
Yeah. And when you think, wow, this just might be a little too disturbing, because what world am I entering into? It's actually, believe it or not, it's got like a lot of sweetness to it. Ultimately, because there's a character who you sort of kind of like.
Yeah.
Who's the newest member of the
you're rooting for him.
The theater group, and he's a hedgehog, and he's kind of naive. And, he's surrounded by all these vicious characters. But ultimately, you get into it, you get engaged and invested, and it turns out to be a great movie.
Yeah, the climax. The climax.
Wonderful.
Oh, my God.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's funny. There's a great story about how when Peter Jackson was trying to convince various producers on the Lord of the Rings thing, there was, I believe it was Barry Osborne, who was one of the producers, was convinced that, yes, we're going to do this. And he actually made the mistake of telling Peter when Peter was saying, well, we can do 2 movies. And Barry thought he was so intellectual. He goes, well, wait a minute, isn't the Lord of the Rings 3 books? So isn't that 3 movies? And Jackson goes, yes, it is. Right there, they just made 2 films into 3. And then after Barry realized what he did, he said, okay, well, but this guy knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. Then he noticed the posters of both Meet the Feebles and Bad Taste. He goes, what the hell did I get myself into? Jackson talked a good talk. He had everything. Everything was like so great and so brilliant and stuff. But then he goes, what did this guy do? But of course they went through it, and of course they did a brilliant job of creating Lord of the Wings. Meet
Lord
the
of the Wings.
Yeah. Lord of the Demon Who's, man.
I am the Lord of the Wings.
Yeah,
I love me some wings. But it's great with Peter Jackson. By the time you get to Dead Alive, I mean, that's when you really see the incredible filmmaker that he is. I mean, he always showed promise,
and what a monster kid he really was too.
Yes, yeah,
right.
Because that thing is a tour de force. Everything that a monster kid wants is in that movie.
Yeah.
Also considered a cult classic.
True. Yes. All right, Ed. School us.
I'm back on. Well, we were talking about because I had the straight to video thing throughout the years. I've been seeing a lot of straight to videos. And one of the things I do on the show, and I am in no way deriding anyone's religious beliefs at all. I say that, and you guys at the Monster Party have no part of my being a blasphemous individual. But I do an Easter episode every year where I show Christian kitsch movies. And they're usually of the kind of I don't know if you know, like the famous Ron and June Orman, the ones where they would tell if the commies came in, Christ will be defeated. And they're that kind of stuff. It used to exist. It still exists. It exists. Of course, Tyler Perry makes Christian movies. The big thing about Christian movies in Hollywood is they sort of creep in on you in the last half. You suddenly see someone reading the Bible and say, I found two that I showed up. Well, I showed two on the show. One is just, this one can be found on YouTube in its entirety. The Lock-In from 2014 is a Christian found footage horror film a la Blair Witch. It's supposedly a bunch of video footage.
It's called The Lock-In?
The Lock-In without a hyphen, I believe, 2014. And it was made on a no budget, so they made it like a Blair Witch, that it's found footage. And what it is these young men, they find a magazine. And the thing is, the actual frickin' movie, you guys can curse so I can say fucking movie. The unbelievable fucking thing about this movie is that it's all anti-porn. Is that it's basically, there's a tradition. A friend of mine, good friend from Texas, said, yes, we did do lock-ins. It was the thing that if you went to religious school or you went to parochial, your catechism during the week, you would then spend a Saturday night at the local church as a sleepover. I would brought up as a Catholic. I don't know any of this stuff, but supposedly this still does happen in the South. They'll have a nice communicating night where everybody comes, they bring a guitar, they're not allowed to use their phones. So in this, though, there's a devil loose. There's a devil loose in the church or wherever they're doing the thing. And it really is I'm giving away, I'm spoiling the end of the movie, but it really was all because a kid brought in a porn mag. That basically he had a porn mag.
It's like the demon of porn kind of thing.
Yeah, the thing, what amazed me is this is 2014 when kids don't read magazines. They look at the internet. Why isn't it a website on a phone? I kept marveling. I watched it with a friend and we kept marveling that why isn't this about a phone or a website? It's
who says magazines are dying?
Yeah, I know. It's more like our generation looking at pictures in a static 2D medium. But that's one that I did that I really appreciate. The other
it actually sounds like it's pretty good.
Well, it was when they do the scary moments. What's amusing about the scary moments, they're actually those good kind of like out of the blue suddenly. Right. They're not really scary moments as much as you leap out of your chair because they've gotten a real quiet ambiance.
Do they do, because one of the things I love about found footage films is they can be really effective at creating a mood.
Yeah, they do.
Like
they do
real.
That. But the only thing is they keep emphasizing that just in case we lost the thread, they'll have a guy who's with the preacher and he's talking about, I've had this for years. And the thing is, he says, but I went back to it. I went back to the website. So they acknowledge there is porn on the internet. Okay. And then suddenly he comes to I'm doing this visually, of course, and our listeners can't hear it, but suddenly his face will come right up to the camera and he's got devil eyes and he's like, I'm back into it or something. So it's this kind of thing where because he got back into porn, he's now a demon again.
Does Bible Man show up?
No, I've done Bible Man until Willie Ames. Yeah, we've done Bible Man is amazing, and he has that Bible girl.
Those are really fun.
Those are a lot of fun.
Wait. When you say amazing, isn't it amazingly
amazing
bad?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Amazing. Well, I use amazing a lot for different things, for different reasons.
To be even fair to the Christian audience, intended for. It is intended for children. So there's got to be, it's like you got to factor in that aspect of it as well.
Well, there's one, because there's indie filmmakers all around, and we're always looking for people like Tommy Wiseau, Neil Breen. We're looking the gentleman who did Birdemic, people who are sort of clueless. And there's a guy in Jersey who is a propagandist. He's actually and I hope he doesn't have me killed or anything, but he is a Supreme Court. He's a federal court judge who writes novels and makes movies. There's a guy named Kenneth Del Vecchio.
Really?
And some of his films are these right-wing screeds. One was called Obama Nude. He played Obama. He's a pudgy Italian-American middle-aged guy who makes a deal with the devil to be America's first Marxist president. That was Obama Nude. That's not the one I want to talk about. Obama Nude was a political tract.
And it had blackface?
No. He didn't want to touch that part of it. He didn't want to go near that. So he's a white, pudgy Italian-American in the suburbs of Jersey who has a deal. The devil comes into his basement. He's in a rec room. And he's like, party, dude. And he becomes but he made a film called The Life Force, 2011, which I found out from my friend Michael Faust. I have to give full credit because a lot of these have been the discoveries of my friends. They say, watch this, you'll go insane. Blanche Baker, the daughter of Carol Baker, plays a doctor who leads three women into a room, and we're in a sort of a limbo. We don't know why why they're being taken hostage in this room. It's because they were 3 girls who were about to have abortions, and they have been taken hostage. They are in limbo, and they must be proselytized to see how abortion is bad. And the devil is Robert Loggia. This filmmaker, Kenneth Del Vecchio.
Whoa.
He went out to LA and he shot certain scenes with certain actors who needed the work. So there's scenes of Robert Loggia on TV that they keep seeing going, "Are you doing my bidding? Are you going to kill the baby?" You know, I'm making up dialogue. The only other star is Charles Durning as he's about to die. He got Charles Durning in person in an office going, "We've got to hunt these girls. Where do these girls go? Do you really want to have the abortion, honey?" Like he's a man in an office. He's a generic.
Wow.
Charles Durning does this?
So Robert Loggia and Charles Durning are maybe like real conservative.
No, I don't know if they
probably just wanted the job.
Yeah, exactly, Matt. No, that I just did this on the show this year. I did the God's Not Great films, and they contain a bunch of people I think who just needed work. Like there's people, like there's Melissa. The one I did was Melissa Joan Hart, who is a right winger. Pat Boone, who's a mega right winger. Mike Huckabee makes an appearance. This is a whole other series of films, but it's also got Ray Wise of Twin Peaks, and I kept like hoping he'd kill everyone. Like he just wants to. So, and then there's the later one. Yeah. The earlier one had Dean Cain and Kevin Sorbo, who are right wing.
Okay, the later
one has Tatum O'Neal. The later one has Tatum O'Neal and Ernie Hudson from the Ghost. Oh no, it's Ted McGinley. He was in the second one. Ernie Hudson. I think Ernie Hudson just needed a job. I think, but this particular filmmaker. So he did this one. One of the things they're forced to watch in this limbo run by Blanche Baker is a bunch of documentary footage of people on the streets of Jersey being asked about abortion, and all of the people who like it have children in their arms, and they're friendly and they're loving and they're wholesome, and the people who go, "Whoa, I love abortion," and they're all like party hardy dudes puffing beers. And if you look at the credits, you'll see that the last names of a lot of the people interviewed is Del Vecchio. There's a bunch of people
that's hilarious.
in the final credits.
Well, I mean, we've discussed the movie Blood Freak a number of times.
Oh, yes.
Which has this Christian aspect to it. But I always thought that was an interesting film because you do get the Christian message. You get the anti-drug message. Yeah. But then there's this incredible violence.
But also, you get the anti-drug message from a chain-smoking guy, director, I think, giving little monologues during the movie. Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah, that's a good one.
But it's a good message film, you know. Stay away from this.
It's got the turkey monster too, don't they? Turn
the turkey monster, right?
Yes, the turkeys. Yes, it's
finally a horror movie for Thanksgiving. You know,
that's right.
So that's just one of the many weird things I've uncovered.
Wow, those are like all of them.
You are just a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. I try to keep up with the badness, but there aren't as many bad films as you know. It's sort of like hard to find, the great crap that used to be. Now you really just have your handful of
the great entertaining crap.
Yes, the stuff you want to watch.
You bring up a very good point when it comes to the fact that now with technology, almost anyone can turn out a pretty polished looking movie.
Right.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
I really do miss the days when it would be some bad film stock and a lot of blue gels.
Yeah. Well, like
bad audio.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Like
I'm looking up in the camera.
I'm looking up a Ron Orman film, and like one title he had was "If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do?" which is on YouTube, which is the one where we learn about the communists coming to America and how they'll defeat Christianity. And one scene has them bringing a wheelbarrow full of candy in for young children to say, "Here's what Comrade Khrushchev will do, whoever Comrade Brezhnev will do for you." It's that kind of there is that sort of. I also did one years ago.
Fucking kids.
I'm forgetting the one title, but did you know Todd Bridges makes movies? He makes, I'd have to actually look up what the title of the one I showed was, but there was a Todd Bridges movie that arrived at the magazine I was writing for, which was a trade magazine reviewing these things, video business.
Is this Todd Bridges from Different Strokes?
Like direct-to-video films or something?
He directs direct-to-video films, and this one was a weird one because it was the backwards version of Fresh Prince of Beverly Hills. It was a rich family downscaling into a poor, it's an African-American production. Yeah, and it was this thing where he's in it as almost like a Malcolm McDowell Clockwork Orange figure because he's wearing a bowler hat or a derby-like thing. And and the thing was, one of the best things about it, and this is where I got to bring in Godard. I love bringing in foreign directors whose work I love anyway. Godard does a thing where when you're watching his films, he'll cut out the sound instantly. There'll be like an immediate removal of the music or the sound or something like that. And what he did, Todd Bridges, was just never added the Foley. So it was him doing, again, something that Godard did intentionally, which is pull sound from a scene and just get rid of it and jar the viewer because suddenly you're hearing a piano concerto and poof. And Todd Bridges just, I guess, didn't finish the film. So it's an unfinished film that suddenly they shoot each other and there's no sound of the shooting. It's kind of like an amazing, and the only reason I knew it was Christian was about 45, 60 minutes in, someone says, here it is, it's called Flossin 2001, when a Bel Air family's fortune diminishes before their eyes, their living options become minimal. You watch the movie, it was directed by the Bridges brothers, Todd and Jimmy Bridges, and as you watch it, someone goes, hey brother, what are you reading? Oh, I'm reading the Bible. And then you're like, oh, this is a Christian movie. This happened about 45 minutes to an hour in, because I was watching it going, what is the purpose of this? Is this just literally Fresh Prince of Bel Air backwards or something?
So Todd Bridges and Kirk Cameron and Willie Ames should join forces.
Yes.
Epic
they would
Christian
their own United Artists kind of thing.
There was also the moment where there was a company, you talked about Canada, we were talking about the Canadian animation, which is amazing. Canadian company called, was it Cloud9 or something? They used Margot Kidder, Gary Busey, Howie Mandel, who they were in a bunch of these, not exactly rapture thrillers, but they were considered like, they had names like Retribution.
Yes, I remember those.
So there's a moment, and there's a moment when that studio, their biggest names was they got Mr. T to be in one, which wasn't one of the rapture films.
And
they got Burt Reynolds.
So that makes sense.
And they had a Burt Reynolds one where it was the equivalent of that old Rod Serling thing with Peter Ustinov. He's an old man who runs a deli, and a little African-American boy becomes his friend. It was sort of a story that Rod Serling told years ago. So there is this whole, it's literally a whole other industry that makes millions. Those God's Not Great movies that I was talking about, they make millions of dollars at the box office, and yet if you're in most major cities, you never hear of these movies.
Never heard of them.
But, hey, there's something for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
I like that.
So
here's one. I have one that I think maybe we very briefly talked about before, but this is a film that's really out there, really bizarre, but I really enjoy it. From 1987, Anguish.
I don't remember this, John.
With Zelda Rubinstein, who's the small person from Poltergeist, the psychic, and Michael Lerner. This movie is really bizarre. It's kind of like, I think, an American-Spanish co-production, but basically Zelda Rubinstein is this like very controlling, crazy mom who she controls her diabetic full-grown son, played by Michael Lerner. She has like these telepathic abilities, and she sends him out to kill people and collect their eyes. And the
not a film for James.
The ad campaign.
Don't touch the eyes.
The ad campaign for the movie at the time was like, the city's eyes are mine, or whatever. And this was like at the height of Zelda Rubinstein's popularity from the Poltergeist films. But what the thing is, though, it's super trippy because you find out halfway through you're watching a movie within a movie. The things taking place with the eyes and all that is a movie called The Mommy. And as we, at some point, we go back and we see that there are people in the audience watching The Mommy. But then meanwhile, there's like a real killer who's got loose from the audience and who's killing people, kind of mimicking what's happening on the screen. And the people watching The Mommy are having hallucinations or feeling all weird. It gets just super bizarre, but it's really interesting, really visually bizarre. Michael Lerner's really good. He's like this totally like distraught guy who's like being controlled by the crazy mom. There's like bizarre imagery of like snails. There's snails crawling all around in the mom's room, and it is super freaky, and it gets even weirder towards the end. But it's worth watching. I think it kind of, I don't know how well it did at the time. It came out briefly. I remember seeing commercials even on TV for it. It's 1987, but it was like after the kind of slasher boom. I think maybe it was, people thought it was another slasher film, but no, it's its own animal. It is really bizarre, but it's worth seeing. It's really entertaining. I don't hear people talk about too much, but it's out like on DVD and Blu-ray, I think, and it's definitely worth checking out. It's called Anguish.
Anguish.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's funny. You mentioned a film that we brought up maybe briefly before. I'd like to do that too. I know that we've talked about this, and Matt and I've talked about it too. There's a film that I saw when I was a kid, when it was on Creature Features late at night. It's like in the 70s. It's a film called Equinox.
Oh,
yeah, sure.
Love it.
People ask, why do you consider it a cult film? Well, Matt had mentioned, sometimes these cult films, maybe it's a low budget film. Maybe this film stock isn't that good. Maybe the sound isn't that good. This is a perfect example of that type of film. It's dated 1970, but actually they started to make it way before that.
Right, like a student film, right?
Well, that's the funny thing. And other people say, so why is it so special? This was actually made. Dennis Muren, who went on to become, Star Wars. I mean, he was like the ILM genius,
special effects guy.
Special effects guy. He was like a co-director on it. He's actually not really given credit for it, but actually he and a bunch of other people started to work on this as a student film. You're right, Sean. And then it was seen by a distributor, and they said, hey, we could make this into something bigger and better. And so they brought in the talents of Dave Allen and Jim Danforth, who are known as being stop motion animation guys. And what's interesting about this film, as Bob Wilkins, the host of Creature Features, brought up, he says, well, if you look at the cast, they seem to like age as they go through it, because when they started the film, it took them a long time to actually get to the actual ending, whether it was like a few years. And one of the cast members,
here we go.
Yes, was Frank Bonner, who some people will remember from
Herb,
the salesman from WK.
Big guy.
Yes, exactly. And the funny thing is, here you see a young version of him, and it's when you watch it, sometimes I think he's going to go and just like, hey, but
and also his sideburns come and go throughout the movie.
Yes,
right.
That's
different times.
And isn't Fritz Leiber in there too?
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't want to say this is the greatest film,
but it's super creative, though.
Well, Bob Wilkins, the host of Creature Features, would say stuff like, when you watch this film, think of it as it's yours.
Yes, right.
Like if you were to make this film, this was not a big budget studio film, but what these guys did, what Dennis Muren and Alan did, and they were able to pull everything they possibly could. Friends and Favors, and they did forced perspective, stop motion animation.
Really striking stop motion stuff. Really cool.
Incredible.
And look, it seems to be kind of slow, and people go, so what is it? Basically you have
it's the Evil Dead.
Yes, Matt,
like a Necronomicon type book. Kids
it's like 4 young adults, and they head into the woods to look for lost scientists. It's very similar to the Evil Dead thing, and as they go through their adventures and stuff, there's some creepy things that happen. And as a kid, I mean, I really loved it.
Me too.
And again, what you're looking at, if you watch this, it's an early film of these very talented filmmakers who went on to achieve great success.
And also, it was a shorter running time, and producer Jack Harris actually came in and gave them funding and to make it into a feature-length film. That's why they look a little different at times, because certain sections that were financed by Harris were done later.
Right.
Jack Harris of Blob fame.
Right, kind of like what he did with Carpenter's Dark Star, I think, the same thing.
Yes.
He expanded that movie.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, it didn't seem like, from what I remember of the film, that there was any sort of sync sound being used.
Well,
it seemed like it was dubbed later.
I think it was all dubbed.
Yeah, I think so.
And
there's a famous
kind of
line,
badly dubbed.
My cross, my cross.
It's weirdness, though.
But
no, that's true.
One of the reasons why I brought this up is for listeners who we're all staying at home. You can find this on YouTube. Criterion did a beautiful job.
Yes.
It is on a DVD, and they have extra stuff on it. But if you just want to watch it, you can go to YouTube and watch the whole film. Again, I'm saying this is not the greatest film, but it's got some cool stuff.
That was such enthusiasm,
Yes, there's a lot of love went into this film, and if you're a Monster Kid completist of any kind, I think you absolutely have to see this film.
Eat it up.
Yeah, and also this was a film that when it came out, I mean, it only cost like $8,000 or $10,000 to make. It went on to make a few $100,000, which was a big deal.
Well,
what would happen is they would show it at midnight showings. This was in the Bay Area, and probably traveled around to Southern California and stuff. So Equinox, check it out. James, you had something?
No, there's another parallel with Evil Dead. It's not just the plot. Here you've got these, young, talented filmmakers who are just going out on their own and getting something done. And it might take them a while, and they might have all these different, technical limitations, but then they do an amazing job.
Totally.
Yeah, and stop motion animation takes time.
Yeah. That's a good one.
I've got one. Just to kind of angle back to, we were talking about religious films. This isn't necessarily a Christian or religious film, but it's definitely cult, and it does involve religion. And it's called The World's Greatest Sinner.
Oh, yes.
The World's Greatest Sinner.
1962 film written, directed, and produced and acted by Timothy Carey.
Yes.
Who you might remember from Paths of Glory. A really unique, interesting actor. Narrated by Paul Frees.
Nice.
And it's all about this guy named Clarence Hilliard. who is this insurance salesman, but decides that he wants to be a cult leader. And so he goes along this path of building this church, which he calls the Eternal Man's Party. And yes, he is this cult leader, but he also adds elements of being a rockabilly rock star to the film as well. So you get these great performances. And I also want to single out the theme song, which is by Frank Zappa.
Yes.
Wow, really?
So there's a lot going on here. And you see Clarence Hilliard become this cult leader, and then you see his path trying to become almost like a god himself. Mm-hmm. But as we get to the climax, you are led to believe that he runs into the real God, and there are some problems.
Is it done kind of tongue-in-cheek, or is it done straight?
I would not say it's the greatest movie of all time, but it is compelling. And it is interesting, and there is a humorous element to it. There's almost an avant-garde quality that you see all the way through the film, and it's a trip. It really is. It's a really interesting film, and I don't know if you'd want to see it more than once, but I would suggest at least seeing it once.
Right.
Ed, what do you think?
Well, we were talking about Duke Mitchell, and that's the end that Murawski came up with for Gone with the Pope. It's the end of that movie. I was watching and I was going, this is the end of The World's Greatest Sinner, because he had footage that didn't conclude the plot. You can clearly see that it's
left open.
What it is. But it's, that he's in a church and he's struck blasphemously dead, which is the end of The World's Greatest Sinner. There's also, by the way, the anthology. We were very lucky in New York City because we have this one theater that shows the weirdest stuff known to man, all this amazing avant-garde. They had his son come by, Romeo Carey, who takes this on a trip. He will not let it come out, the second film that Timothy made, to DVD because he's sort of mad. He actually told the audience this, so I'm not talking behind his back. He said that because he sold that or licensed that to TCM, that then showed up on the torrents, and it showed up everywhere on the internet, The World's Greatest Sinner. So he's not going to license. Have you ever heard of Tweets Ladies of Pasadena?
I have not.
What is it called?
Finished. It's called Tweets Ladies of Pasadena. It's Timothy Carey's second film, which is never played in a theater or on TV. He made it as a funny TV show, and he wasn't in The Godfather as a result, because Coppola's got Richard Conte and Sterling Hayden. He's got all those guys from old noirs in The Godfather, and he wanted Tim Carey because he thought Tim Carey was perfect. Tim Carey said, no, I'm making my own film, which was Tweets Ladies of Pasadena. He then begged to be on number 2, and he begged to be on number 3. But it's a film in which a bunch, and I'm not making this up because they're younger women when they're on the roller skates. It's about a knitting circle. It's like a Snoop Sisters thing of old women who solve crimes. But when they're on roller skates, they're played by younger women on roller skates. And Tweet is, I believe, his name is like Tweet something. It's Timothy Carey in an overalls as their handyman. And the film is about an hour and 10 minutes long. It's a pilot for a prospective TV show.
They transform into younger women?
No, they transform just because it's younger actresses playing the role because they need
older women, old ladies might have problems skating.
So there are these amazing scenes where suddenly Tweet will wake up and I go, how are you today? Because Timothy Carey has this weird way of talking. He'll talk to the animals, and it's Dr. Dolittle time. They talk back to him. So when Romeo Carey spoke at the anthology, they said, where did the animal speaking come up? He says, well, what happened was my father made it as a 24 minutes pilot for TV. Then they said, why don't you make it an hour and a half? We'll make it a movie of the week. He never knew what he wanted to make it. He didn't know, should it be a children's show? Should it be a crime show? So it's sort of an amorphous mass that runs about an hour and 10 minutes, which is a very long time. And the weirdest scenes are Timothy Carey talking to animals and saying, well, how are you? And then they answer with cartoon voices and stuff, even though they're live action animals. And that's the film that Romeo Carey is holding.
Oh no!
It will make a lot of money.
I need to see this.
Yeah, it's sort of like he appeared at like Rochester House. What is it called? Eastman House in Rochester. My friend saw it there. He will appear with it, so you have to like get Romeo to come to your town.
Wow!
Because he will not put it on
that
letter.
He's very mad that what happened because I had seen World's Greatest Sinner on a mysterious mail order. We won't talk about it, like it was a magazine that used to distribute it, but then it showed on TCM, and you finally get a pristine copy.
Perfect.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was and it was just, also, by the way, one last, because I have too much trivia about this crap. Frank Zappa was on Steve Allen's show at that year, 61, 62, and he asked him, you've composed a whole symphony, a whole soundtrack for a movie? Mr. Zappa, he keeps calling him Zappa. And Frank goes, yeah, it was this movie that Timothy Carey, the actor, made called World's Greatest Sinner. And he goes, who's in the movie? Would we know anyone? It's, Steve in his professorial mode. He goes, I don't know, a bunch of people he found on Sunset Strip. He derided the movie, Steve Allen.
Yes, he did. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, have you seen the Art Finds Poker Party? There was an LA public access show that was run here in New York too, and it's on YouTube. I definitely recommend it. Art Find F-E-I-N's Poker Party. He had Timothy Carey on, and Timothy's talking about like when he was in Prince Valiant, and I went over to Kubrick's house, and then he was telling Brando was telling him he was fired, so he had to stand there with Kubrick to go. So he tells all these wonderful stories that I believe are real, and then someone asked him about, you worked with Frank Zappa, and he goes, I didn't like what he said. He's very mad about what Frank said in 1962 on this Steve Allen show. It still rankled him in the 90s when he's a very, sadly, not well man. He doesn't look healthy, but he still remembers.
Larry knows that kind of feeling as well.
Oh, yes.
Being mad about something for a long time.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
But
Frank Zappa related?
No. Look, hey.
Larry's been mad at Zappa for years.
Really?
No, Zappa and I, we have a good relationship, but Matt, this is something I'm working on.
Okay.
So,
I know. But it's also charming about you as well.
Well,
but one of the things, though, that I would say about The World's Greatest Sinner is that, like I said, it's not the greatest movie you'll ever see by far, but I think that Timothy Carey is so interesting to watch. That's what makes the film for me, is that I can't take my eyes off that guy. And your impression, Ed, by the way, is beautiful. There's a moment you want to watch the film again, like right now, because I just love hearing him speak.
Yeah, he's got a moment.
Got a magnetic quality.
He
could have been a giant star.
Oh yeah. He's got a real charismatic. Have you guys seen Head, the Monkees movie? He has that same head. We're out of boy, Mike. And there's a narration on the BBS box, the Criterion box, where Mike Nesmith says, "Oh, Timothy Carey," like he's watching it live with us, and Michael Nesmith goes, "He was a big guy, and I don't mean physically. He was a big guy physically. He said he took up a lot of space. Tim Carey was a kind of a guy, if you met him, that I guess he was about 6'4" or something, but he said he just spiritually took up a lot of space." And it's sort of like, I guess, meaning Tim Carey, he was like a larger than life. His final project was he wanted to do a play about the pedo man, the man who farted professionally.
Oh, right, yeah.
That was his major project.
Whoa. Don't toss that. And
that's a real character.
Yes. There's a film in Italian or in French. I think it's French with Ugo Tognazzi playing him. He was a man who played the French music halls, and I guess around Europe, and he would light his farts. He would actually he was pedo man is like
he would be musical farts.
I guess he could do them, and he could light them up in colors. He could do like maybe he could play the Marseillaise and have it like come up. That was
this is a very popular act, by the way. This is not even a joke.
I've heard about that. Yeah. I never really.
And it was Tim Carey's dream, and I believe because when we saw him, I saw him with a girlfriend at Walter Reed. Romeo Carey brought World's Greatest Sinner, the perfect copy, and he shows outtakes of his dad just doing an act and talking. I don't think he actually does the farting. I would have loved to have seen him, but I think he discusses it in a tape, and he goes, "Well, my idea for a play is I'm going to do this guy," and he describes his pedoman thing. It became his ultimate project at the end of his life.
That's hilarious.
A friend of mine, a comedian friend named Steve Oakes, he did his own short film about Le Pedoman.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
And it was like 20 minutes, but it was very well done. And there is also a British production about Le Pedoman starring Leonard Rossiter, who was The Fall and Rise of Reginald Perrin and Rising Damp, a beloved British comedian. But this guy was not a joke at all. He was the real deal. Yeah. And a lot of people have attempted, I guess, to show his life. There should be one right now. Somebody should be getting funding for.
Matt, I think there's an audience for that.
And audience of one right here.
Well, or maybe some of those comedians that maybe had made several bad films. Maybe this is their way to come back. Like maybe Jim
the
Carrey
musical fart film.
I could see Jim Carrey in the role,
or it would be like a Jonah Hill directs. So the guys who turned to directors, Seth Rogen and Jonah Hill, want to direct. Why not direct something like this?
Right? Yes. Yeah.
So Ed, do you know offhand which character Coppola had Timothy Carey in mind for? Was it Luca Brasi?
I don't remember. It was just sort of like he wanted all those dudes from that generation, and he asked him, and he said, "No, I'm too busy." And then there's literally one of the things Romeo showed was, I believe, from the third film, he prepared like, "Here, Francis, please," and he did a thing where he's sitting at a table playing the mafioso, and it was his demo saying, "Please, please, please put me in Godfather 2, or I think it was Godfather 3 by that point." He was just begging because it was the dumbest decision he ever made, because Tweets City for Paradise is never. The Sun tells, I have a T-shirt T-shirt. My friend in Buffalo got me a T-shirt of Tweet's Ladies of Paradise that was drawn by Timothy Carey. He had a cartoon for it. So he went that far that he actually had the ad mat done, and he had done a poster for a film that was never going to play anywhere.
Wow.
Wow.
All right, James, what do you got?
Well, a couple of years ago, we did an episode with the topic psychopaths.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And American Psycho came up, and I remember saying that, I had read the book. The level of intensity of the book was such that the movie adaptation, I was wondering how they would do it, and they couldn't possibly do it as it was filmed because it's basically unfilmable. And that movie adaptation, the Mary Harron one, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't really the book. And, since then, I realized that there actually is a movie that comes closer to the tone and unrepentant, nihilistic feel of the novel. And that movie is from 1992. It's from Belgium, and it's called Man Bites Dog.
Oh, yeah.
Man
Bites
I've always heard about that one.
Yes.
I've never seen it. Yeah.
It's definitely worth seeing. It's a
That's the documentary one, right?
Right. It's a mockumentary. It's about it's about a group of documentary filmmakers that are following a serial killer and actually documenting what he's doing. And little by little, and it's very fly on the wall. There's no judgment. But little by little, the guys working on the documentary start to take part in the killings.
Right.
So there's satirical points to be made, and I've read that the film is considered sort of a dark comedy.
Yeah.
At the time that I saw it, I didn't honestly. I wasn't picking up on the comedy. I was just like, really, God, this is pretty freaking disturbing.
No, it's scary, I thought.
Really?
Yeah, there is no filter of morality to it. It's completely immoral. And there's just something about that you're in this world that's just, all bets are off. And that actually comes closer to American Psycho as a reading experience than the movie American Psycho did for me. But I definitely recommend it. You really sort of got to be in the mood, and I don't know what mood that would be, but it's worth checking out.
Right.
There's a great scene. There's a great scene in it where he's being followed by his documentary film crew, and they encounter, if I remember correctly, another gangster. He's got a meeting with another crook, and that crook has his own documentary film crew, and the documentary film crews get into a debate about who should be filming and who shouldn't be filming. So it is this kind of commentary on media. It's a commentary on killing. It's totally about amorality, etc., like you're talking about. But it's also about the media, the fact that he is getting besotted. He's thrilled that he's the star of his own movie, so it makes a comment on documentary people going like, look at me, like, Grey Gardens, the daughter going, look at me, that kind of thing.
Right. I would say a good double feature to that one then would be, I don't know if you've ever seen Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
No.
2006. And it's great. It's directed and written by Scott Glosserman, and it's a documentary crew following around a serial killer. And he's explaining how he does things and how with every serial killer, there's a guy that's hunting him who he calls an Ahab. And that movie, the humor is a little funnier than, say, Man Bites Dog. But it's a really good film and an underrated one. And if anyone has not seen that, that's a good double feature. You might want to have this one be the second feature. It's a little more lighthearted and it might take some of the edge off.
What's the name again? It's called
Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, really good.
Nice.
All right, shall we do another round?
Yeah.
Ed, what else you got?
Oh, okay. I have one. We discussed this a little bit the other day. This is not in the horror mode at all, except for one character and his occupation. Can Anonymous Merkin ever forget Mercy Hump and Find True Happiness from 1969? Is Anthony Newley's, and it stands in a weird place because on the show I keep showing Art House and Grindhouse, and I love like Godard and I love directors. Fellini, we were discussing the other day how many bad movies have been made that you can't blame Federico Fellini for, but the filmmaker thought he was being Federico Fellini. Right. So this is the first of the many 8.5 ripoffs, because later on there's Alex in Wonderland, all that jazz, Stardust Memories. I mean, you could run through 1,000 films that are based. But what's
the code again?
Oh, the name is one of those. Jacques Brel is alive and well and living in Paris. It's one of those, or Who is Harry Kellerman and why is he saying those stories? This is Can Hieronymus Merkin ever forget Mercy Hump and Find True Happiness? And it's this Anthony Newley Anthony Newley also, I would defend. There is that amazing Gurney Slade show. He did a show in the early 60s on British TV that's just recently come out on DVD, and you can find it on YouTube. And David Bowie loved it and brought it up in the 70s. It's this weird show that's like a fourth wall breaking show where you have this kind of schlemiel guy who keeps on. That show, Gurney Slade, I totally recommend. Count Anonymous Merkin as a bad movie is a fun bad movie because it's an egomaniacal, crazy ego trip for Tony Newley, who's making his own 8.5. He doesn't know what movie he should be making. He's playing a character named Hieronymus Merkin. Joan Collins, who was his wife at the time, is playing his wife whom he's cheating on. So in the film, it's a given that he's cheating on Joan Collins, which is kind of amazing. And his idea of guest stars were Georgie Jessel as Death. So we have to remember that in 8.5, there's that weird figure. I believe it's Claudia Cardinale. In All That Jazz, it's Jessica Lange when she was young and gorgeous. So there's always a Death figure. Here it's Georgie Jessel. This is what Anthony Newley thought would be a good. And then Stubby Kaye is writing the film within the film. Victor Spinetti and two other actors played the critics reviewing the film within the film. So Victor Spinetti, and at one point, in case you didn't get who the film is based on, Victor Spinetti has a speech impediment because they're making fun of three specific. One of them is supposed to be Penelope Houston, I think. Like, I don't remember who he's playing, but Victor Spinetti goes, I blame Fellini. He has a stutter and he names Fellini just in case you didn't get what he's doing. The devil is played by Milton Berle, and Milton Berle conducts a black mask. So we have a horror.
He is the devil, right?
Yes, he is the devil. And we went to the Gilbert Gottfried podcast where they discuss constantly the size of his dick, and there's 1,000 stories about Milton Berle's appendage.
Yeah, it's supposed to be huge.
That is literally a story. Yeah, they do entire episodes about Milton Berle's dick. The one thing about, there are hundreds. Yeah, there's all these stories about like he'd be wearing a robe or whatever. But no, the thing that's unique about this, given Anthony Newley's incredible penchant with and without Leslie Bricusse, and same way there, vice versa, he always had hit songs. There was always, in every bad thing he'd be associated with, there'd be one song that you'd remember for the rest of your life. And they had Broadway shows and West End shows. He'd have 5 or 6. Yeah, there were incredibly good songs. There's no good song in here. There's a few songs that are catchy. Well, they're catchy, but he had a guy, and I should have looked this up at a time. The gentleman who co-wrote with him was a gentleman he never collaborated with otherwise. He decided not to use, or maybe Bricusse was busy on his own projects. So it's these chalk and cheese. We are Joan Collins, and he sing a song in which we see Anthony Newley's ass. So he's one of the auteurs who's got naked in his own movie, and they sing a song about chalk and cheese, like that's a British expression, like we're like so unlike. Yeah, and it's sort of like there's a few of those songs you remember. There's one called Trampolina Wham Bang, which is done as its own little piece, which is him singing the fairy tale, Trampolina, once upon a time, da, da, da. And that's very catchy, but it was never going to be a hit single like, If I Ruled the World, or What
a Fool Am I?
Yeah, exactly. He's literally like things that Sammy Davis could sing on the telethon. You're not going to be singing Trampolina Wham Bang, But it is part of that, and we discussed this the other day. We were talking about it's part of this moment in film, in American and international film, where there's Skidoo, Sandy,
I was just
and Myra Breckenridge. Yeah, there's this
Everybody
moment
thought
where
they can make this like counterculture, big Hollywood production, and just completely implodes. And it's like, no, you can't
watch it.
You can't set out to make a cult film.
Yeah, they would try to make a young person's film, and they were mostly, and he's not even that old too. But the thing was, Anthony Newley was from a different generation. He wasn't with the rock and roll. He didn't even enjoy rock and roll. So basically, for him to do a film of that moment was weird because he was harkening back to the Rat Pack moment. He's much more. So
was it like this kind of masturbatory production that
totally
a bomb?
The odd thing is I know because of my weird days circulating amongst people who did either zines or they would be bootleggers. To be honest about it, I know where the print came from. There was a Sinatra fan who he's now passed on, who had a 16mm print, and it's missing the song that Stubby Kaye does. Oh, what a son of a bitch I am. That's the actual name of the song. That's missing. So basically. This print, well, it's on YouTube. You can see it on YouTube. This whole film is sitting on YouTube in a kind of an inferior print, but there is no beautiful print. Even in England, it's never come out on DVD. And it's this weird thing where I know the guy who put it on tape. He had his 16 transferred to tape. And then I saw it appear at Chiller Theater Convention on different people's tables, different zine editors, Video Search of Miami. The one guy who got it sent it to Tom Weiser. And then it just suddenly became like a much bootleg film. Now the version you can see is a little bit clearer. But yeah, it's one of these films where you're kind of like, why is he doing this? Recently, Anthony Newley's son is like a painter, and supposedly he's a very talented painter, but he's not that famous. His mother and father were extraordinarily famous. He wrote a memoir in which he decided to out his father as a pedo. And in the film, that's an issue. Well, he decided to use the film as evidence, and it's in the film that Tony had a thing for teenage girls. He had a Woody thing. It's funny we mentioned Woody earlier.
Wow,
he was Heba, whatever that name is, like Heba, as opposed to a pedophile who wants little girls, he wanted teenage girls, and he struggles with it in the film's narrative. It's not extraneous. It's not something he struggles with the fact that he's married to Joan Collins, but he's attracted to Mercy Hump, who is played by, was it Connie Kresge? He's played by, Jim might be able to help me out. She was one of the Playboy Playmates, plays Mercy Hump, who's the one he's falling for. And the
Connie Kresge was a playmate.
I believe it's that one. I believe
she was of age. She was of age.
Yes. Oh, yes. And that's the thing. But she's playing sort of a jailbait. She's playing jailbait.
Right.
And then he witnesses a man later in the film touching a little girl's knee, and he punches the guy. And you realize, like, he's realizing, I'm into teenagers. That guy's into little girls. He's disgusting. Maybe I'm like him. So it's in the narrative of the film. So the son had no proof of anything other than the fact that Tony Newley had lots of young fans. He might have slept with them. Then again, David Bowie, Mick Jagger, Robert Plant. You know, you could say that the music business as a whole was entirely...
He was married to Joan Collins.
Yes, he was at that time. It's one of those...
Like, my God.
It's like when Tony Curtis used to talk about young Janet Leigh and how he felt compelled to cheat on her. It's like, young Janet Leigh, you cheat, you know, like you have the most amazing wife that everybody's lusting after, and you're cheating on her because you feel you have to do it.
That's amazing.
You know,
so it's sort of a weird...
You've just totally messed up my world.
Is it just as weird and disturbing as the Garbage Pail Kids movie?
The guy that I've seen, because I went into it
starring Anthony Newley.
It is he had a very bizarre career because he was an insanely talented man. He wanted to do Chaplin on stage, and he had all these dream projects, and it became stuff like that he was doing. And you're kind of like, why? This man who was so talented, what happened? The weirdest thing I can give you is the trivia, because I was reading books about him. There's only 1 or 2 books. He didn't actually write music. He would actually hum it to a dude who wrote for him, like Captain Beefheart.
Really?
He was a guy who, I didn't realize Bercus was the lyrics. I always thought Tony Newley was the guy who came up with What Kind of Fool Am I? That's Leslie Bercus. He would actually not sit at a piano. He would hum, and he would come up with da 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 da, and go to another guy who was the third when they received a songwriting award a few years ago, when they were both alive, obviously. I think Bercus is still alive. They had to bring the third guy up because the third guy was Tony Newley's arm. He was literally the guy who would sit down and write the notes on the piece of paper. And that's the most fascinating thing about Newley, is that he was that gifted that he really honestly didn't play piano and yet wrote those songs. Because I noticed he never really sat at the piano that often. I'm like, wait, he wrote the songs if he didn't write them. And it turns out that he was just one of these, whatever, polymaths or something. And so when you see him in the Garbage Pail Kids, or you see him in later years on The Love Boat, or he became a Hollywood stalwart.
Well, I would just like to defend for a second. You brought up Skidoo.
Okay. Yes.
Which I know that was a movie that was, it's directed by Otto Preminger, not exactly a youngster. Time.
Known for his counterculture.
Exactly.
Obviously,
they were trying to make this counterculture groovy movie.
Yeah.
And it is exactly bad in the way that you describe. But then there's so much bad in it that it becomes Ed Wood.
It goes around the other end.
It goes around. It's brilliant.
Like the Harry Nilsson score.
Never seen that one. The Harry Nilsson score is
wonderful.
Unbelievable. And then the cast, my God, Jackie Gleason, Carol Channing, Frankie Avalon.
It's every Batman villain.
Groucho Marx.
As God,
John Philip Law.
Yes.
John Philip Law. I saw this at the Egyptian here in LA.
I think I was with you for that.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And I'm watching this thing, and at first it just seems like just the mood of it is strange.
Yes.
But by the time you get to Jackie Gleason in prison,
yes,
and he's a mobster. He plays a mobster who's in trouble with the head of the mob, which is Groucho Marx.
That's God.
They call God.
Right.
He's in jail at one point, and he takes acid.
Yes.
And if for one scene in this entire movie for you to watch, watch that one.
Yeah.
Jackie Gleason tripping his brains out is genius.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It's pretty bizarre. It's actually a weird because it was written by, there's all these Batman villains in it because, of course, Otto Preminger was Mr. Freeze.
That's right. Burgess Meredith.
One of the co-scripters, I worked for that series of books called the Motion Picture Guide Annual. I was doing the annual for three volumes. The guy who started it was Stanley Ralph Ross, who was a Batman writer. And if you ever get the chance and you're in a library, which I know so few people are, and you ever see the incredible Motion Picture Guide, the original series of movie encyclopedias, Stanley Ralph Ross took it upon himself to create his own movie encyclopedia. He decided, I'm going to go Leslie Hallowell and all those guys who had those one volume,
right?
Here's everybody's film. He said, I'm going to do the best one, and we're going to charge $300 for it. I remember we promoted it on talk shows. It was all cribbed out of varieties, and it was written by college students. It was actually fake. By the time I came on, 2 or 3 volumes before me, they actually started seeing the films, and we started actually writing a book that was about what came out each year. When he did it, what's funny to look at is Stanley Ralph Ross's opinions about movies, including Skidoo, which he likes, mind you, because he got some money. He peppered it. I guess Otto Preminger needed someone to come up with stray gags, and he knew him from Batman, or, because Cesar Romero, Frank Gorshin, and Burgess Meredith were all in the film.
Yeah.
So it's got all these Batman villains. So it's this weird thing that Stanley Ralph Ross is one of the few people on record in that series of books going, it's not that bad a comedy. It's actually pretty good. And the other films he puts down are things like Taxi Driver he hated. I mean, if you literally go through and find the people he hated, he called Robert Altman a young punk when he was making McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Wow. The man was 45 years old. It's like he was not a young, he was a young punk in the Yeah, so it's literally Stanley Ralph Ross getting it all off his chest about all the people that probably screwed him in Hollywood and
right. Yeah.
But Otto Preminger's check cleared, so he's got a review of Skidoo. Where he goes
a very biased book.
Yes, it's completely. He goes off on a tangent about Jimmy Cagney in one review, and he goes, "These are the kind of performances that are never given these days by these overpaid young whelps and whatever." And he goes on, and it's like, what the fuck is this book? It's literally embarrassing. Like, I was happy we were working on something that was very different, but that is the one place you can find a good review of Skidoo, is in that one series.
And Skidoo, I would argue, is one of the best bad movies you will ever see.
It's a good party movie. It really
definitely,
is.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, it moves. There's all kinds of fun in that movie.
Yeah.
Like when you say a party movie, Sean, is that like when we're having a couple drinks, or is it just on in the background?
Or some of the reefer even.
Yes.
Garbage can will make I don't know what you're talking about, John.
Bring it the old reefer.
Yeah.
I'm going to have everyone over for cough syrup.
I know. Sean has turned into Mr. Reefer. So. All right.
Sheridan.
All right, Mr. Reefer, you got another one for us?
Actually, this is a little different here. I'm going to talk about a movie that's actually a documentary about a cult filmmaker. Oh. And this is a movie that just came out this year by Severin Films. Severin is a great company that puts out lots of cult movies. And I just watched this, and it's fantastic. It's called Blood and Flesh, The Real Life and Ghastly Death of Al Adamson.
Oh, no.
This is a feature-length documentary on Al Adamson, and it's great. And for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, Al Adamson was kind of like a true cult filmmaker in the 60s and 70s. You're talking about the guy who made Dracula versus Frankenstein, Satan Sadists, Horror of the Blood Monsters, Reign of Blood, Blood of Dracula's Castles, all these other films. And he was like this kind of like rogue, filmmaker. He just made stuff for hardly any money, sold a lot of stuff to television. But he's known, today because he was murdered. He was murdered by this kind of sleazy contractor guy. Adamson was living in Palm Springs, I think it was at the time.
Right.
And he would he was still making movies, but this contractor guy kind of insinuated himself into his life, started kind of dress like him and take his credit cards and buy stuff. And Adamson, at the time, one of Adamson's muses in his films was this actress named Regina Carroll.
Right.
And she was this buxom blonde who was in many of his films. She, I think late 70s, early 80s, she actually eventually passed away from cancer. So Adamson slowed down his filmmaking career, and he kind of moved out, kind of becoming a bit of a loner in this Palm Springs house. And that's where this contractor kind of came into his life. But the film's good, though, because at first it covers all of Adamson's most popular films, which is great. And he's got Russ Tamblyn. He's got a lot of the women from his films. He's got, Adamson worked with like Vilmos Zsigmond and Laszlo Kovacs, these great cinematographers in some of his early movies. So even they were really cheap. Some of them were actually photographed really well. But Adamson's career as a filmmaker involved the Manson Ranch, one of the movies he was making. Like they filmed at the Manson Ranch, and Charles Manson was hanging around. He had porn stars in his films. One of the main investors of one of his early films ended up committing suicide because he owed money to the mob. Adamson got involved with like UFOs and had Colonel Sanders in one of his films. It's an amazing story.
Wow.
And it's really, really fascinating. And so it goes into that and then into basically his real life started to take on the same elements of the tawdry, sleazy, dark elements of his movies.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, it's definitely worth watching. And like his movies are really fun. And Severin put this out because talk about, again, to be living these days as cult fans, Severin Films put out this like huge box set of like every single Adamson film. And includes this documentary, but they also sold the documentary separately. So of all the filmmakers to be, celebrated in the digital age, Adamson's gotten the red carpet treatment somehow.
Nice.
Which is great. But because I really do enjoy a lot of his films. Really, Adamson is one of the ultimate cult filmmakers. And this is a great documentary on him. So you should check it out for sure. It's called Blood and Flesh, The Real Life and Ghastly Death of Al Adamson.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
You know what? Hey, Sean, I always loved his films too. Well, loved. I don't mean loved.
Entertainment.
I enjoyed them from time to time.
Yeah.
The guy who I liked more was Ted V. Michaels.
Sure. Very similar.
Who was sort of like your poor man's Russ Meyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
he would have
those movies
Tarzana.
I thought were extremely entertaining. I mean, I have the Doll Squad on 16 millimeter.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a good
You're
time.
hardcore.
That's
hardcore.
I'm hardcore.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's a rough one to get. Yeah, sometimes that's a hard one to get through.
But that, isn't that the one that's kind of like basically Charlie's Angels?
Yeah.
Before Charlie's Angels.
Sure. And Francine York, Tura Satana.
Michael and Sarah is the bad guy.
Sarah, yeah.
And Francine York, man, she was something else back then.
She was sweet,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of really funny scenes in that film where like there's one where there's some guards and they give them something to drink and all of a sudden they just explode.
Yeah. No, it's complete nonsense.
And has there ever been a documentary about him?
There was, John Waters narrated.
Yeah.
John Waters narrated. They got John Waters. And the thing that was great about it is at the end you can see him, let us say, because he was such a nice man to me. I interviewed him with Jim doing camera work. He was a sweetheart. The thing being that he always sort of, let us say, maybe didn't technically meet the mark. So I'll say that. And you watch him doing CGI. He probably got some young college student. So you watch something that's either Astro Zombies 3 or Corpse
He would do sequels to Astro Zombies.
He kept doing it. And so that you see the final minutes of this documentary, jovially narrated by John Waters, shows you Ted dealing with 21st century technology and doing what he did with 16 millimeter, like the way he directed, the first few movies. Like,
and isn't it? And he seemed like the coolest guy. And wasn't it true that he like literally lived in a castle with like a harem of women?
I have that as my clip on YouTube of the interview because I finally got him to talk about it. And he goes, I don't know why everyone obsesses about this. He would say he was teaching them filmmaking and he would call them his wives. Yeah, he referred to them as his wives. He had a harem, basically.
Yeah.
And he said they didn't have to date me or sleep with me in my bed, Lord knows, but they basically couldn't date anyone else when they lived in my house. I was their husband. So it's weird. And if I may, the most amazing later film, which I mentioned to you guys the other day, is something he oddly made that was straight to video, shot on video. Apartheid Slave Women's Justice is this amazing tale of a man who is we talked about it. It was and it's this film that I talked about in the time.com when the Drew Barrymore Charlie's Angels came out. I was doing these pieces that I wasn't being remunerated for time.com, never got any money, and whatever. I did the piece and I decided, let me talk about the Doll Squad. So I actually wrote about Ted V. Michaels because I'd already done the interview with him and I just reused parts of that. And I went into Apartheid Slave Women's Justice. It's in the time.com article because what it was him, and he has a long crawl at the beginning, and he misunderstood apartheid. He thought it was like a slave plantation. He didn't understand how apartheid worked in society, that it was strata, that it was sort of like, he didn't get that it's a very different thing. It's racist, but it's not racist in the way of the old plantation. Right. So he has a bunch of African-American actresses who obviously were a local theater group because we see them performing a dance troupe probably. They were dancers and they dance around. The plot is that he's mean, and Ted would always wear that whale. He had a whale tooth or something. He had a tooth.
Yeah, right.
An animal. I think it was a whale tooth. And he had already established in his first film and in 10 Violent Women that he kind of liked being stomped on because he's a guy in 10 Violent Women. And he gets a stiletto in the chest and the woman's pressing it in and stuff.
Wow.
So in this movie, the slaves revolt and they kick him. But what he decided to do, speaking about Foley and adding effects, he didn't add really good kick effects like from a Kung Fu movie. He added doink doink effects that sound like Pac-Man. They're kind of like doink 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 doink. And I could watch that forever. I could watch Ted, as much as I like the man and he was so funny, I could watch Ted lying on the floor being kicked by women and hearing doink doink effect.
All those fringe filmmakers like Adamson, Ray Dennis Steckler, Michaels, like all those guys are really, I mean, you know, now their stuff is kind of being appreciated and recognized, but like they were successful in their own way. They churned out that stuff, but now look, we're still watching their stuff today. You know,
Steckler got even weird. So the point was that Steckler at one point put out his auditions for his porn movies. So he's got a series of tapes called like the Las Vegas Girls #9. And my friend Michael Faust got a copy and sent it to me. And it was this insane thing where he's going, so who are your favorite actresses? And she goes, Meryl Streep. And who's the one who played Angel? Betsy. I can't even remember her name now. The one who played Angel in Hooker by Day.
Yes.
No, it was Betsy something. I can't.
Betsy Russell.
Betsy Russell.
Yeah,
she says that. The girl goes, yeah, my favorite actresses are Meryl Streep and Betsy Russell. And it's like, wow, we don't even need an interview after that. It's just sort of like, and he would ask some
favorite actresses.
It's basically also him as an older man going, will you take off your top for us? And the woman goes, no, I'm not really comfortable with that. She didn't know that wasn't in the ad. And he goes, well, could you? And it's just like watching an old man beseech a younger woman to take her top off. It's so sleazy. But he put them out and he charged for them. They were advertised in Psychotronic and Shock Cinema and all these videos they'd have. Like, he also took his old features and he tried to make them longer. He would take a feature that was like 60 minutes long. Blood Shack. Yeah, there's one called The Trooper, a.k.a. Blood Shack, which he then added 15 minutes of rodeo. Yeah, it's a different cut of a same film that's shorter. There's one.
Did he try to make the title longer for the incredibly strange creatures who stop living with mixed up zombies?
He had an amazing story he told every interviewer about how he talked to Kubrick on the phone because Kubrick was doing Dr. Strangelove or How I Stopped Loving the Bomb, whatever. And he said that Kubrick said, it's okay, kid, you're not copying me, blah, blah, blah. This is he had all these amazing stories. But yeah, there's an amazing, his porn is funny to watch because some of it is acquired porn that he and Carolyn Brandt would just talk over. So they're going, oh, isn't this great? Da, 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 da. And it's like watching like What's Up Tiger Lily or something. It's like watching...
Was Carolyn Brandt ever in any of the actual adult stuff or not?
She's not in the adult one. No, she would get a little naked, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, she would get close to almost naked.
That was it. Yeah, she was like Regina Carroll. She wouldn't. She wouldn't do actual porn, but he would acquire like the most nasty, very, let me say, gynecological, like very genital-oriented porn, where that's what you're looking at for most of the porn, and it's really unpleasant to watch. And then he would narrate over it, and that's what makes some of it watchable. And then he'd give it a title, like the one that's the Hollywood slasher. Like, I know very little about LA and the ins and outs of it, but he shows you parts of LA I've never seen in any other film. It's like watching a documentary, the one called The Hollywood Strangler meets the Skid Row Slasher.
Where there's the Lemon Grove Kids versus the...
Yes.
Those Lemon Grove Kids was kind of like his homage to the Bowery Boys.
Right. And he would film the lower parts of the town. So he goes to like movie memorabilia stories. In the one with Carolyn Brandt, The Strangler versus the Slasher, he goes to like where they're showing Deep Throat. He goes to certain movie memorabilia stories. It's
like a great time capsule.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're like watching a documentary because he was shooting in the wrong end of town. This is never in any other film. No one would use that part of LA. But watching it, and the films themselves are, at one point he zooms into a Kiss album. He didn't know what to zoom into. So he zooms into Kiss Love Gun or something, and it's like, why are you doing that? I don't know. Very
awesome.
strange. But yeah, that's a very weird style of filmmaking that's very specific and everything, and very idiosyncratic.
I don't mean to jump anyone's turn here.
Sure.
But if it's okay,
you
brought up Kiss.
Yes.
And what was next on my list?
Oh my gosh.
Was
Anthony Serby? Yes.
Yeah. Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park.
Yeah.
I'm a giant Kiss fan.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so, I mean, that's a movie where, now I wouldn't say that it did that kind of redemption thing where it was awful, but then it's so awful that it's good.
No, it's
It's pretty
but
bad.
it's somehow I enjoy it though.
But it is an oddity.
Yes.
It is a cult film.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
Definitely.
And it's got Anthony Zerbe in it. Come on.
Yes.
Yeah,
maybe my expectations might have been too high, Matt.
And you know what? And I completely understand that, because you would think that, this band that has this stage show that's so spectacular, that, hey, when we finally got to a movie, it was going to just blow your socks off.
Yes.
And this thing is it's a train wreck.
But keep in mind, too, this is a TV movie, financed by Hanna-Barbera.
Yes, that's correct. You're right.
Yeah. So kind of aimed at kids, made for television, but like what?
And it's Kiss basically fighting a mad Imagineer, really.
Right.
About it. He creates animatronics for this theme park.
Which is a great idea.
So then, of course, he ends up making robots of Kiss that they have to battle.
Yes.
Right.
Of course.
In the most unconvincing fight sequences ever.
Yes, right. All the laser stuff from but
you know what gets me, Matt? What gets me is on the surface, I understand. You say maybe this isn't the greatest film, and I get it. But what irritated me was here you had these guys who were let's say it, 4 rock stars. And if they all participated equally, but what you see, the thing that gets me is Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, they want to do this. But Ace Frehley, I think, couldn't care less.
This was at some sort of
and he goes, he wanted to, I just want to talk like a bird. He goes, the whole time. What the hell is that?
There's all kinds of there's all kinds of dubbing. And this was during the stage, I guess, where Ace was really having some problems with alcohol.
Oh yeah,
so he would get wasted the night before and then just never make it to set. And so, and there's a famous scene there's a fight scene where it's not even Ace. It's an African American gentleman playing Ace.
About
put a black guy in Ace makeup.
In Ace makeup. That's whiteface. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Wow.
But those were the kind of problems that they were dealing with.
Yeah. Was it a ratings hit at the time? It probably was, though, right? Because of Kiss's popularity. I would guess it in prime time when it premiered.
Yeah, it must have.
Did it do well? It must have done well.
They did release it theatrically.
Did they?
Really?
Oh, I didn't know. Oh my gosh.
In Europe, I forget if it's Europe or Australia, because there was a couple different cuts, but I know that there was a European cut where they added some more stuff, and then they took out the Hanna-Barbera music, incidental music, and put Kiss songs back in.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Is there like a spicy continental version with like nudity from Anthony Zerbe or something?
Only in my fan fiction. But that's one where I watch it now and I am amused by it. I mean, it doesn't. It's not Skidoo.
No.
And double feature with Skidoo.
It's neat to see these guys at that time. It was at their height.
Again, time capsule.
Yes, time capsule, and that is neat. But then it's like, okay, I can forgive the Ace Frehley going rah, 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 or whatever, and I can forgive the fight.
Monsters, but then
when you get to the end is so, and I don't want to give away the end.
Oh, no,
don't spoil it.
But
you make me want to watch it again.
Red Wedding, fine,
but
not this.
No. But I look at it, I go, what the hell? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But
no. And that was the end. They started by doing the Kiss comic book with the blood in the ink.
Yes. And, the blood
and they did a follow-up to that. And so their idea was now they're going to be superheroes, and they do a series of films that would have them as these
God, can you imagine
rock stars with superpowers.
Can you imagine what those could have been like, man?
Yeah, but this was the end of that. And there was a time where you weren't even allowed to even bring up this film, where you'd get
I know. I think finally, wasn't in one of the deluxe Kiss DVD or box sets of like their music or something. They put it out. I think you can get it with.
It's on Kissology. It's on the it's on the second one.
Because before that,
but it's edited, which may be for the best.
Because before that, I think it was always hard to get. You couldn't.
Yeah. the thing that gets me is you bring up a really cool thing, Matt. I mean, it could have launched them into this whole other world. The idea of Kiss guys being superheroes
fits.
And if they all were on board with
They're
it,
mega stars. Yeah.
it could have been cool. Can you imagine rock stars who were superheroes in each one? I mean, as a young guy, I mean, I was just hungry for that. I mean, it seems like it could have worked, but sadly, only in your fan fiction, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And Gene, out of all of them, Gene went on to have a real acting career.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It was not bad. You know, you put Gene Simmons in a role that fits what he does,
sure.
and he was great. But this just, I don't know, it just wasn't the time, and with the substance abuse too. That didn't help things either. But I do laugh every time I see them in their cloaks on the lawn furniture.
Yes, those high chairs.
I mean that just makes me so happy.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love Kiss, and it always brings a little bit of a warm place to my heart. The last time I was out, my wife and I, we had our anniversary in Oakland where we saw Kiss. And it was like right before they shut down everything.
Right.
That's so I mean, that's the last time I was outside. So
you said you saw the show. You saw the show though. They were like,
they were incredible. To think that these guys are, 70 or almost 70. I mean, they put on an amazing show, lots of energy. I think it was about 2 hours. So
that's great.
They did a really full show. And if we ever come out of this thing and they still want to tour, I'm going to go back and see them one last time.
That's cool.
I have a feeling. Yeah, I have a feeling they are. I think once this thing is all over, they're going to go. Oh, all right, let's put on our things again.
It's convenient that you have those costumes,
Yes, and just to clarify, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons are the only two originals.
That's true. Yes.
Did Peter Criss? Did he come back?
No. They haven't been in the band for a long time. This lineup is to replace Ace and Peter. It's Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer.
And they've been with the group for a while.
They've been with the band for a while, and they're great. I mean, I discovered them in junior high school. I'm a monster kid, and here's this band that they're monsters and they play rock.
Yeah.
And it was everything I've ever wanted. And I was into Alice Cooper as well, but Alice Cooper, I felt like was a different type of show.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more Halloween-y, where this was just this onslaught, this giant, more like a circus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
So weird. The only connection, because I'm more of an Alice Cooper guy myself, but the only time I've seen them live was when I worked at TV Guide. They gave us tickets to see different MTV Unplugged, and for whatever reason, other people got Nirvana and Dylan or whoever was doing something East Coast. I got to see the Kiss one, which lasted over 3 hours because it was mostly retakes. My girlfriend at the time and I were held hostage by Kiss because what happens is you can't leave the room. They tell you, don't use the bathroom, don't leave the room because we have to make you match in every single shot.
Right.
So the thing was, the two guys came back, Chris and Ace came back, and it was like, and the audience went berserk, even people like myself who like Kiss, but I don't love them. I have like double platinum and that's it. But the thing was, they got this genuine audience reaction that everybody's like, yeah, the original Kiss. And then they said, could you recreate that for us? Because Kiss themselves felt they weren't musically up to snuff. It was Gene and Paul were running the show.
Right.
We had to hear every song at least 3 times. And they had like let's say 12. So we sat there listening to Shout It Out Loud 3 times, Rock and Roll All Night 3 times, Calling Dr. Love, Beth, maybe 5 times. They literally did everything at least 2 or 3 times to the point where we weren't enthusiastic. It was odd.
Right.
Because they were asking us
I can see that.
Because when they first came out, they should have they should have prepared every cameraman, get every possible angle, because everyone went crazy. People were like, this is the original band and blah, blah, blah. And no, it was the weirdest experience because we ended up having an argument, my girlfriend and I, because we had been held, as I say, hostage and it is like you're not allowed to leave to go to the bathroom when they're doing a taping like that. If you leave, they're going to have a hole in the audience and then it's not going to match with all the shots. So they were telling you, if you think you have a problem with sitting for 3 hours, and at that time I was able to do it, you have to leave right now. So we didn't realize that it really was going to be 3 hours. We figured they all run like an hour, right? They're 40 minutes. How long was the one Nirvana did that everybody saw? And I asked someone who saw the Dylan one and she said he did 1 retake. So I was asking like other people who saw them, did anybody do retakes? Kiss decided every song had to be done multiple times. And it was like, oh my God, guys, you're, sort of a diminishing returns, the law of diminishing returns.
So Kiss, I mean, I don't know, it was like 73. Was that the time when Kiss was like, or was it like a little bit before that?
Early 70s, yeah.
Yeah, early 70s. So there was another, that's kind of keeping the theme of animation. There was a really funky adult animated film that came out around that same time in 1973 that is considered a cult film. It's really funky, looks great, and I'm talking about the 1973 film Fantastic Planet.
Oh,
It was directed by René Laloux, and it's interesting because it's a French film, and it was all in French, but it was dubbed in English and brought to the United States, and it's a really unique, odd-looking film. And if you imagine let's say there are these aliens that live on another planet that take humans from Earth to have them as little pets, and these aliens are gigantic.
The Alms.
Okay?
Right.
Yeah, the Alms, and they're very gigantic. And the humans, they're actually not called humans, but they're like pets, but some of them escape and they breed, and so they're kind of like pests in a way. And in the film, it's really odd. It follows this one character that is a pet and actually is able to escape. And what's weird about this planet is the aliens, they have this way of when they kind of meditate and their minds can go and interact with other aliens.
Yeah, their consciousness kind of goes into a different place.
And what's weird is if you interrupt them in this, it can mess them up. They can kind of go blind. And it's basically these little humans try to fight back. And it's not really a fast-paced film. It's kind of it's slow, but it looks it has a great look. The
visual design is great.
Yes, the visual stuff is really, really cool. It was actually animated at the Jury Trinka studio. This is in Prague. And what's interesting is Jury Trinka was this very famous, talented animator who did a lot of really cool stuff during the Cold War. And his studio created the animation for this film. And I remember seeing it as a kid, and how, although part of it I didn't understand and it was kind of slow at parts, I did think that it was really odd and interesting.
All the little details of like the flora and fauna of the planet. Like characters walking, there's a weird plant in the background grabbing like a little animal.
Yeah.
Right? And great haunting music score.
Yes.
It's really good. It's really cool.
What's neat is I mean, you can find clips of the previews on YouTube. I don't think it doesn't live on YouTube, but you can see various clips, and the style of it is really, really cool. So
that's a movie that's a movie that as to one kind of time where I think if somebody did it right in the right hands, a live action version of that movie with that same design could be amazing, because the designs, the Alms, I actually have an action figure of an Alm.
Wow.
Man, yeah, it's really cool.
And it's funny, Sean, that you bring that up, because now in our day and age and the digital technology, you could
if it was done right. Yeah. I mean, the animation's fantastic, but I just still think today that world created in a real world would be awesome.
And I want to clarify too, it's not really a kid's film. I mean, there's actually there's nudity in it and stuff.
Yeah.
It's very adult, like an adult animated film. But it is really cool, and it is considered a cult classic.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I like that movie.
This is a title that we probably mentioned a million times, but I don't know if we've ever really focused that much on it. I'll preface this by saying that in 1977, I was a big Mel Brooks fan, and I was going to see every Gene Wilder and Marty Feldman spin-off movie. And there was a theater in Flushing, Queens, called the RKO Keiths.
Yes.
You remember this?
Yes, I went to see Star Wars there. We talked about that.
Everybody, they showed 20th Century Fox films almost exclusively. So that's where a lot of people saw Star Wars. That's where I saw Alien. And it was also a theater where you could sneak into R-rated movies, which was not easy back then.
Yeah.
And it was an old movie house, a movie palace.
Yeah. It was an ex-vaudeville house, I think. It actually had done vaudeville there. Yeah.
And it had beautiful, ornate, little cherubs, statues and stuff. But what they did was they turned it into a triplex, three cinemas.
Right,
but they never bothered to get new seats. So in the cinemas on both sides, you'd be sitting in an angle. It was really weird.
Wow.
But anyway, I went to see, and they also had these really random double features, like Damien, Omen 2, and Quadrophenia. It's like
perfect double feature.
In 1977, I wanted to go see Gene Wilder's The World's Greatest Lover. So I went, and the co-feature, kind of off my radar, but it was Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise. Years before. And I really had no preconceptions about it. I'm like, all right, it's the co-feature. I'll sit through it. and I was absolutely blown away. And I went back the next day to see it again.
Wow. You're probably like, what the hell did I just see? I gotta go.
Yes, exactly.
Am I insane, or did that happen?
It was so much fun. It was colorful. It was funny. It was scary. It was moving. The songs were incredible. I mean, most of our listeners probably know this, but it's it's a spoof of Phantom of the Opera with Faust thrown in and the psycho scene, and a lot of it's played for laughs, but at the same time, it's very much about, speaking of Alice Cooper, very much about kind of what was Kiss for that matter. What was going on in music back then, the Sha Na, and the whole 50s revival.
That's true.
And it was smart, it was funny, it was beautifully shot. Brian De Palma was not someone who I was into at the time, and this was the movie that got me into him.
Right.
And I also bring this up because, Ed, when we were at a Chiller Theater show years ago, you got to interview Garrett Graham.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Who played which character?
Beef.
Right. Yes. Okay. But he was supposed to play, because he goes through it. I have that on YouTube, the piece that he talked about, that it was supposed to be Peter Boyle, I believe, was supposed to be Beef, and he would have been Winslow. Like, Paul Williams didn't want to be Winslow. He thought Swan was a better part. Like, they literally traded, and the Sha Na Na were going to be the three guys that are Archie Hahn. Like, he runs through the whole cast that would have been.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, James, can I ask you a goofy question? When you saw it, you said it was funny. Did you actually laugh at at those scenes?
No, not that I can remember. No, I think I was just too sort of fascinated by it.
See, because to me, I found it scary. And just because I had never seen anything like,
really?
I know. Look, look. I wasn't as sophisticated as Matt. He goes, the whole Beef character and stuff. I mean, that was like, I've never seen this. I don't understand this guy, and this is kind of funky.
It was hilarious. Well, as a kid, I laughed my ass off with the plunger in the face in the shower.
Yeah,
and
does James,
anyone who tries dies.
Yes.
Does anybody?
I know the difference between drug real and real.
Yes.
Come on, that's hilarious.
At the time, I don't know, was that a movie where at the time did that do well? Was it until later?
I think it failed, except in France.
I would think it probably
Canada.
People didn't
have it had the two cities, Winnipeg and Paris. It's gigantic in Paris and gigantic in Winnipeg, and then it became a cult movie for the rest of America.
Okay.
Yeah, because they kept trying to re-release it. Yeah,
an example of what makes a cult film is that a lot of times, even a movie like Blade Runner, it might be a big budget movie when it comes out. It just doesn't have an audience. It grows an audience, and sometimes the audience is insane about it.
But that's true. Like, a cult film could be a big budget Hollywood film, or it could be an Al Adamson film. It's just a matter of what it's like, it just turns out that it gains this, it's so strange and so kind of out of the blue weird that it's later that it becomes that cult, following.
The thing that you have to admit, though, however people feel about it, the look of the actual Phantom is so fantastic.
Awesome.
The look of the helmet, the outfit, the black, the teeth. The whole look is that alone.
Yeah, it's great.
Is
beautiful,
terrific.
Love it.
And the songs by Paul Williams.
The songs,
fantastic.
Sort of
all of them,
gothic love songs.
They're all great.
It's also really funny. This is take on the Beach Boys. It's really fun.
Sure.
Yeah, they're all they very successfully do different music genres, and they do them all really well.
Yeah. And Paul Williams has said that this is one of the things that he really enjoyed about the project, which was he was given the opportunity to do all these different musical styles. And I thought he pulled them all off really well.
If anybody could, he
and he's wonderful. Paul Williams.
Brian De Palma is not. I mean, Ed, do you know about how De Palma regards this movie now?
He's on the DVD. He's on that recent Blu-ray, and he does say he's proud of it. I mean, I guess in general, and it harkens back to that time when he was a much more experimental filmmaker. He actually said, I keep coming back to Godard because he's one of my favorites, but he said his hero when he's making Hi Mom Greetings, those initial films, is Jean-Luc Godard. That's his hero, and then he becomes the Hitchcock guy with Sisters. So by Phantom of the Paradise, he's the Hitchcock guy, but still, he was still this experimental. There's the sense of enthusiasm in that movie. And I've always said it's one of the great comic book movies not based on a comic book. That film really feels to me like the Warriors, Streets of Fire, some of the Walter Hills. They're not comic book. They're not based on comic books, but they have the feel of somebody who, unlike Dick Tracy, where I knew that Warren Beatty had never read a comic book. There are comic book movies where you can tell the director has never cracked a comic book. He's
What is this?
And
De Palma,
with De Palma, the one thing I never understood is why he would go from this experimental filmmaker to emulating Hitchcock and almost everything he did after that. I never understood that.
It just got kind of old after a while. Like it was like, oh, this is yet another homage to Hitchcock, and it just Although I mean, I love Sisters.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
I love The Untouchables, and I love there's a lot of Brian De Palma movies that I enjoy,
totally.
but I never felt like he had this directorial vision like other directors.
Yeah.
You could say a lot of the stuff that he brought up, if it was successful in another movie, why not use it here because it fits for his particular scene? I mean, the thing that gets me is like in the touch,
right?
You know, that scene in The Untouchables, that whole staircase scene, which you go, that's
more of it. But that's more an homage.
I love that.
I love that too.
It's a very weird career. He's had a weird career because now he sort of just makes the thing. You know, when he did Bonfire of the Vanities, for me, was a complete turning point because it was like, what is this identity at that point? It becomes like Scorsese doing Gangs of New York.
It was like a director for hire.
There's not really a vision.
Impossible.
There's nothing.
You're right. I mean,
it's over.
Way more money probably than any of those other more adventurous films, but
It's like, I love Obsession too. That's I feel it's an underrated. The one with Jean-Pierre Bourgeot and
Cliff Robertson.
When he was still doing Hitchcock, and that should have maybe been. But then Dressed to Kill was a gigantic hit, so whatever. So it's a very odd career.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, this has been great.
Yeah, it has.
Yes.
I mean, Ed, I love all of your suggestions, and you're so knowledgeable.
Thank you.
I mean, I could listen to you for hours, but
thank you.
I mean, I'm thinking
you guys have been great too. I've been very. I mean, hey, Night Porter and stuff. I'm like, that's my meat and potatoes. I've shown that on the show. I love that.
Well, are we going to do should we do like a lightning round?
Let's do a lightning round.
A couple quick ones.
Throw a couple that's fast.
All right, Ed. Go for it. Hit us with some short
capsule ones.
I'll just go one high art one because I had a few other low trashes, but I didn't get to do it. Is a short La Jetée by Chris Marker, which was remade as 12 months.
Yes.
Only 30 minutes.
Love that.
Sublime. I think that's one of the greatest.
All done
films.
with still photographs.
Yes.
Except for one shot. One shot is like
she wakes up. Yes.
But it's so black and white stark photography.
It is a beautiful. It's a romance too. I think if you're going to actually be on a date, I mean, some of the best French romances they've done. Some of the best, and that La Jetée, and it's based on Vertigo too. It has very definite rip-offs of Vertigo.
Can you say? Can I just give the gist of what the premise is?
It's actually interesting because they've been writing about it in the French press now because they're having a quarantine too. That basically he has one dominant memory. This man, when he was a child, he saw a beautiful woman on a jetty, looking concerned over something, and he's taken in. France is exploded. There's a nuclear Armageddon. And they're down in the bunkers and they're thinking, how did we get out of this? So they need a man with a strong memory to take them back to the past. And he relives this beautiful romance, which I was saying to Jim the other day, it's actually evoked in To Sir with Love. That's the thing when they go to the Natural History Museum. That's from La Jetée. It's
nice.
And then they realize if we can send him in the past, he can go in the future and find out how we got out of this. And then and then it leads towards the scene at the jetty. So it becomes this perfectly... He didn't write much fiction. He wrote one novel and he wrote another film that's sort of like this called If I Had Four Camels. And he co-wrote the plot for a Walerian Boracek. I can never pronounce that guy's name, a Polish filmmaker who did cutout animation. And there's people flying. So it's weird because Marker, I think, was an amazing documentarian and a brilliant essayist. But this film is like this masterful piece of sci-fi where
it's like a short. It's like about maybe half hour.
30 minutes. You can get it on Criterion. You can get it in English or in French. It's been dubbed in French and in English. And it's just a masterpiece. And it's something where I think it moves me each time I see it. It's more and more moving. And it's something where, if you're on like a date and you want to break the person in to see if they're not a person who sees art films, it's only 30 minutes. And I think they will find it incredibly romantic. And it's literally about a timeless romance. It's about a romance for the ages,
I like 12 Monkeys too. I like the extrapolation of that. They did different things with
they have to make a whole plot out of it.
But I like that too. Yeah.
I wasn't crazy about Brad Pitt, but
I mean, it's a showcase performance, but I didn't mind him.
Actually, on the Criterion, he says Gilliam has been very honest. Like when he said you didn't really need to have a Watchmen movie, the book he said somewhere on the Criterion disc, he says you didn't really need 12 Monkeys. Like he admits he liked doing 12 Monkeys, but he says La Jetée is so good, we really didn't have to have made 12. Like it's sort of there's an admission, a tacit admission that we didn't really need it. I'm proud of it. I think we did make a good movie. Yeah. And then I think they made a cable show. I think there was a continuation.
They're a pretty successful TV show. Yeah, right. My wife watches. She really likes.
It's still on. It's still on.
I think it just ended. I think it was a couple seasons. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
But yeah,
So that's mine.
That's a good one.
I would throw that in there. I love that movie.
Okay, well, speaking of Robert Altman, I know I briefly mentioned this. I briefly mentioned this one before, but it's a film I genuinely love. It's a kind of a hard to categorize a movie. I guess you could call it a drama, mystery, thriller, dream movie, and that is from 1977, Three Women.
Oh, yes.
I really like this movie. It's in some ways, it is a little bit of an Altman's homage to Bergman's Persona, because the idea is that Shelley Duvall works at this like therapy place for the elderly, and it's like this California desert town, and Shelley Duvall is just like this kind of very self-absorbed, very super chatty, shallow, character who like she thinks the world of herself, but nobody else really likes her. She's just like this annoying kind of character. Then this very kind of mousy girl played by Sissy Spacek comes into her life, and they end up being roommates. And what happens is slowly and very subtly, Sissy Spacek starts to adopt Shelley Duvall's mannerisms and dress like her. And do
Dear God, no.
And so that's going on. Meanwhile, because it's called Three Women, this other woman played by
contractually, they had to bring in another woman.
Yes, Janice Rule plays this other woman who's this strange kind of loner woman she's pregnant, and she spends her time making these bizarre murals. In the film, she's making this weird, disturbing looking mural in the bottom of a empty swimming pool. And so it's just this weird thing where Sissy Spacek starts to take over Shelley Duvall, and Shelley Duvall starts to kind of like wonder about her own personality. She starts to become more like Sissy Spacek, and it's so bizarre, but I find it really compelling, really bizarre kind of music and sound design, and it's done like a dream. And Altman has gone on saying that it was a dream that he had, and he made it into a film. But
when you're dreaming about Shelley Duvall, I'm sorry.
She is great in this.
She's a wonderful actress.
And the movie's funny too in a subtle way. It's very well acted, and it's just so. It's hard to describe the movie. It would be a great double feature with Altman's other film, Images, which is kind of like about a woman who's losing her sanity. Anyway, it's definitely worth checking out. It's really, really fun. Another one, real quick, I would say is that this is another one we've kind of talked about briefly, but it's just a great kitschy, cheesy 60s horror film. That's from 1965, Bloody Pit of Horror.
Oh, yeah.
It's like these
Mickey Hargitay, right?
Mickey Hargitay. These photographers, they find this old castle, and they want to shoot a bunch of photos for their like horror novels with like a bunch of scantily clad models for the covers of their books.
Good plan so far.
Yes, it's a bunch of sexy models at this castle, but of course it's not a deserted castle. Mickey Hargitay, who's playing like a deranged actor in the movie, thinks one of the women in the group of models is like the reincarnation of his lost love, and he goes and he happens to have a full functioning torture chamber down in the basement.
Of course he does.
And so he starts to lose his mind, and he's kind of schizophrenic, and he takes on this other personality of the Crimson Executioner, where he's Mickey Hargitay shirtless with like a red cloak on and an axe, and he takes them and he starts kidnapping the people and torturing them in his dungeon, and it's ridiculous. He has these like bizarre traps that he sets them in, and it's like there's no nudity, but it's the kind of movie where there's like near nudity, a lot of titillation, a lot of lingerie and underwear, but it's really fun. It's super campy, great ridiculous kind of music and overacting. It's really fun.
Well, it's funny that you should bring up this film because my stripping name used to be the Crimson Sexecutioner. Just Google me.
All right.
Well, I didn't know that, Matt. That's neat.
A little tidbit.
All right. Well, getting away from the horror and maybe going back into the world of animation.
Right.
There's a very talented animator by the name of Nick Park. And Nick Park specialized in doing claymation. He kind of became famous with this film called Creature Comforts, which it's a really cute little film. It was actually people being interviewed about small spaces in England, and they used
the space.
Yes, the animals. They animated animals talking about the zoo. It was a terrific thing, and that's kind of what launched him.
Yeah,
he created these characters called Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah.
There's like this older guy who does all the talking, and then this plucky dog that stays silent, but you can see he's very intelligent, creates all these inventions, and he's just wonderful.
He's like the brains of the outfit.
Yes, he is the brains of the outfit.
A smarter Snoopy.
Yes, exactly. and Nick Park did a couple films. The first big one was called A Grand Day Out, which was an Academy nominated film. But the film that is really reached cult status and actually got a lot of accolades was a film called The Wrong Trousers from 1993.
Yeah.
And this basically builds on their relationship. And what is it? It's here you have this inventor. He's created these little trouser pants that he gets
like mechanical.
He gets mechanical
trousers.
But it's like, look, things aren't. Times are tough. They need to rent out the room. And so they can bring in some money to help them with their inventions and stuff. And they rent out this room to Feathers McGraw, who is one of the most sinister penguins you'll ever meet. and the great thing about this character is with Clay, how they make this little character is very simple, very basic, and he doesn't really have expressions, but you can see the evil within this painting. And it follows a story of, not to give too much away, but how evil and conniving this penguin is, who is staying in their home. And it has one of the best, most exciting chase scenes in it. And it's an clay animated film, and it's terrific. It has reached cult status because there's this fan base of Wallace and Gromit that have these midnight showings. They went on to do other Wallace and Gromit films, and they actually did Wallace and Gromit and the Were-Rabbit, which was a feature film.
That was fun too.
But
I love their stuff.
The Wrong Trousers was the one that really cemented them.
Put them on the map.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it is still shown. That film is still shown at like classic revivals of animation. So
that's
a masterpiece.
Really, really quickly, after Nick Park won the Academy Award for The Wrong Trousers, I heard that he was going to be in San Francisco for an animation presentation, and I decided, oh my God, I got to go see him. And I was so concerned about getting to this place early that I left work early, and I got to the place where they're going to have the presentation. And I figured, oh, well, gosh, I'm early. I was there like an hour and a half early. So I figured, oh, what am I going to do? Well, there was a bar next door. So I figured, I'm just going to the bar and have a cocktail. I go in there. 5 minutes later, Nick Park comes in. And he comes in, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Nick Park. He comes in with about 2 other people, and they sit at the table close by to me. And he's got this box. I'm like, oh my God. And so they're talking, and I had to go, hi, I'm sorry. I'm Larry Strode from, not Monster Party. I said something else. Hi, I'm Larry Strode. I'm a huge animation fan. He goes, oh, hello. So nice to meet you. And I said, oh, well, congratulations on winning the Academy Award. He goes, yes, would you like to hold it? I'm like, what? He had in the box the Academy Award. Pulls it out.
That's what he had in the box.
He hands it. Yeah, it's not the clay figure.
I thought it was going to be the things. Yeah.
No, it was the Academy Award. He hands it to me like this. I'm like, he doesn't know who I am. I can
run away.
I got to hold his Academy Award, and he is the nicest guy. And we had this long conversation while we were waiting. All about Wallace and Gromit and the Academy Award, and he couldn't have been nicer. And I've always been a fan. But anyway, The Wrong Trousers from 1993.
That's a great one.
Good. Great choice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I need to bring up a genre of pictures because this could really be its own episode. But something that definitely fits the cult film category for me would be there was this golden age of fantasy martial arts films that came out of Hong Kong during the 80s and like the early 90s. And there's so many of them that are great. And I just want to run off a few, like Chinese Ghost Story.
Oh, yeah.
1987, directed by Ching Su-tung and produced by Choi Hark, the famous Choi Hark.
Oh, yeah.
And, the plot's pretty simple about a man falling in love with a ghost and helping the ghost break a curse that's made her a ghost. And the curse has been put upon her by the tree demoness. And it's a great movie. They're always beautifully shot. There's been a number of sequels, but they're all great. And they're all a lot of fun. And there was something that's just magical about this time of Hong Kong filmmaking.
Right.
Just these beautiful colors and the action, the energy that went into all these films. Another one I really enjoy, I know it as Spooky Encounters. It also goes by the title of Encounters of the Spooky Kind.
Right.
So you see what they're trying to do there, you know. But it's great, and this is written and directed and starring Sammo Hung.
Yeah.
And he is this guy named Bold Chung, and his wife is cheating on him with his boss, Master Tam. And so he's afraid that Chung is going to find out. So he hires a witch to bring down all this supernatural mayhem upon him.
Mm-hmm.
They use what they call the Jiangshi, or the hopping corpse, or hopping vampire.
Yes, the hopping vampires, right.
Is that Matt, is that like the whole hopping vampire genre? Did none of that originate with these movies?
Well, I think it's from folklore.
Right.
Right.
I think it
Right.
originally came
I
from
know there's
folklore.
there's many movies.
Well, right. And there's the one that really, I think, kind of popularized it, which is called Mr. Vampire. And
Yeah,
that's
okay, yeah.
1985,
Yeah.
which was also produced by Sammo Hung. But this movie has the hopping vampires all the way through it.
Right.
And that's another great one. But Spooky Encounters is so much fun. The spooky stuff is genuinely spooky. The hopping vampires managed to come off in a way where you take them seriously, which is surprising, you know. But there's also a lot of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the martial arts scenes are incredible. And at one point, Chung is possessed by the spirit of the monkey god. And so, there's all these just wonderful elements that they put in this film. But that's a great one. If you haven't seen that one, that's super fun.
Yeah.
And then, there are some erotic ones. There's like Sex and Zen.
Oh, yes.
With the lovely Amy Yip.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
And she is also in another film that I really love that's a kind of a parody of the Chinese ghost story, Erotic Ghost Story, which is three fairies. Yip is one of them. And if you've never seen Amy Yip, you have to Google her because she's just stunning.
Yes.
So these three fairies have attained human form, and they're all trying to get the attention of this scholar and try to get him to have lustful thoughts. And but then there's a twist with that I don't want to give away. That it's a lot of fun. And then just to wind this thing up, there are two classic martial arts films of this time. The first one I know, originally I knew it as Chinese Super Ninja. But its original title is Five Elements Ninja. In a nutshell, the lone survivor of this massacre of his school, he gets all the remaining people of this school to seek revenge against the ninjas that attack them. Mm-hmm. And these ninjas, the bad guys, they do these things like they'll wear like these sparkly gold outfits and have these gold shields. So the sun will reflect off them and blind their adversaries.
That's awesome.
And then the shields.
What if it's cloudy though?
Look, you only attack on a sunny day. And that, Sean. But even the shields, like the shields aren't just gold shields. The shields will suddenly shoot out knives.
Oh,
wow.
Nice.
Of course.
Nice.
And it's great. And there's a scene towards the end where there's a fight with stilts.
Oh,
Like they have these spears that can then transform into stilts.
Wow.
And so there are a lot of the ninjas that are hiding in the ground. And so they use the stilts to kind of like poke into the ground to find out where the ninjas are. I mean,
Cool.
it's so good. But then the film that is truly a masterpiece, and I think a lot of film historians also agree with that assessment, is a film called Legendary Weapons of China.
Legendary.
Also known as Legendary Weapons of Kung Fu. 1982, directed by Lau Kar-leung. So there is this group of assassins that are trying to find a supernatural way to become invulnerable to bullets.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the leaders of this group disbands his forces because he realizes this is a stupid idea and goes into hiding. Well, he's labeled a traitor, and the chief of the clan sends assassins to kill him. Now, I don't want to give away the ending of this film, but let's just say the climax involves 18 legendary weapons of China. This film is great because it also has humor, it has amazing martial arts sequences, and they go through all these 18 weapons. And there's by the end, they use all these things. And it's like everything from double tiger hook swords to, the Chinese spear to the 3-section chain whip. And the cinematography in this thing is beautiful, but also just the scenes of martial arts. I mean, it's not wire work. It's real martial artists doing real martial arts, and it's magic. This is kind of a staple of martial arts films, and it should not be missed.
Matt, even films that do the wire work, though, can be really beautifully choreographed.
Oh my God, Feng Sayuk with Jet Li.
It's Matt, I just want to say, you just brought up like 4 or 5 films, and I actually had a couple on my list. I thought, we could probably do a whole show.
Hong Kong episode.
Just Hong Kong, right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Matt,
there are so many films, and most of them have to do with the type of things that we're interested in.
Right.
Yeah. Most of these martial arts films are not just straight martial arts films.
Right.
They always have a fantasy element.
Yes,
sure.
And for people who kind of like brush these off and go, "Oh, that's stupid." What it's like what just people like doing the kung fu. Or it's like you said, it's more than that. They're fantasy elements, things where I saw this one where they had these blades, spun them around, jumped on them, and they were flying on the blades as the blades were going through. I mean, this like crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And beautifully done.
Zoo, the Warriors of the Magic Mountain. I mean, that thing is like a pure. That's almost like Lord of the Rings with martial arts.
Right.
Yeah. They would do like it's with Choi Hark's productions. They would do. I used to call them Everything in the Kitchen Sink too, because if I remember correctly, Chinese Ghost Story is an incredible martial arts film that happens to be very romantic. That also happens to have a musical number, if I'm not mistaken, and comic relief. Right. So literally it's almost like Bollywood, except it's shorter. It's 95 minutes as opposed.
They throw everything in there.
Yeah, they actually get to every genre in a 95-minute film, and it's kind of like, geez, and it's actually okay. It's actually kind of coheres, as opposed to films where you go, no, it's the comic relief, or other films.
Right.
And when they resort to melodrama, it works.
Yeah.
It's done within the context.
It's very sincere. They're very sincere about it.
Right, yes. It's not tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
But yet they're able to introduce comedy in certain sections where it's almost like it's introduced to you. It's like, okay, get ready, everybody. This is going to be the comedy scene.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a scene in Legendary Weapons of China where a guy is fighting, and to prove to his adversaries that he's so tough, he puts some cow intestines in his shirt. So they injure him, and his intestines are coming out. But then, that does not defeat him. He, gains his strength back and puts his guts back in.
That's awesome.
And then kicks their ass. It's it's great.
That's great.
I'd like to do that if I went to some club and just had like a package of like little chicken guts or something. Go ahead, you punch me, and I have the stuff come out. I go, I'm so tough. I'll put it back in. I'll show you.
I'm going to use that for whenever I'm like trying to get a loan. Really? I can put this back in, or I can, we can have this in your office.
Matt, those are great.
That's awesome.
Those are fantastic.
Hey, James, what do you got?
Well, I got two titles. One of them I figured I'd bring up now that we're in the time of quarantine. And it's Louis Buñuel's 1962 film, Exterminating Angel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. That's a great movie.
You could argue that all of Louis Buñuel's work probably qualify as cult because he was surrealist.
Yeah.
And, even as an art filmmaker, he was definitely not throwing anything at you that you would expect. And in this film, it's a dinner party, a very fancy dinner party that's held by aristocrats. And all the servants mysteriously have to leave before the thing really gets started. But then as the night goes on, the aristocrats realize that they cannot leave the house.
Right.
For some reason, they're unable. They're physically or somehow, spiritually unable to leave these 4 walls. And it just gets weirder and weirder. There's a baby bear walking around for some reason. You can argue that it's a commentary on class differences at the time. It's probably what Buñuel might have had in mind. But it's a freakish Twilight Zone black and white type experience. Definitely worth checking out. And the other title I wanted to bring out was a documentary about cult movies from 2005 called Midnight Movies. By filmmaker.
Oh, what is it again?
Midnight Movies, made by a guy named Stuart Samuels. And what it is, it's about how midnight showings started to evolve, and the films that became popular at midnight, like Rocky Horror, Night of the Living Dead, Pink Flamingo,
Eraserhead,
El Topo, the whole, the groundbreakers of cult cinema in a way, and how
the whole culture of that. Yeah.
Right. And how midnight audiences gravitated to that and even made, huge celebration out of it in the case of Rocky Horror. So definitely interesting.
Right.
A lot of great interviews. George Romero, John Waters. So definitely.
You didn't even bring up John Waters.
That's true.
I know, right? Crazy.
Well, we're
We
going
could
That's a
do a
whole
whole
other
show.
episode.
That's true. Yeah.
It's like the thing I've learned, not to interrupt, but it's like there's so many.
Right.
I have to do this again. But James, please
It's a
continue.
lot of stuff.
Yeah.
No, that was it.
That's good though. Yeah. Wasn't there a book too called Midnight?
Right. Yes. I think it was
I don't know if
Jonathan
that's
Rosenblum.
related.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was
I don't know if it's related to the movie at all, but
I think it was Stuart Samuels as one of the co-writers of the book. I think it was Jonathan Rosenblum. Also, the exterminating angel, I use that as a metaphor when I'm talking to people, and I don't mean to be political here, but sometimes when there's political problems, or even with the coronavirus problem, it's like the whole metaphor of that Buñuel came up with is, how did we get in the room? I'm spoiling a little bit of the end here, but the interesting thing is that's an applicable, like the thing with La Jetée, they send a guy to the future to figure out, how did we get out of the nuclear bunker? How the hell did we? And in Exterminating Angel, the whole thing is they can't exit the room, the bourgeoisie, because they don't know how they got in the room, and they have to learn. We put ourselves in a room. How the fuck did we get in here? That's how we'll get out. And literally, that metaphor, it sounds a little corny, but that metaphor works. It's like jumping the shark. It's literally a universal metaphor. It's like, well, how did we get into this horrible?
How did I get into this podcast?
Exactly. Exactly. How do we get out of it? Yeah. It's a very good metaphor for like life. Like how did I get it?
Yeah.
Job. Why am I working at that? It's the a once in a lifetime Talking Heads song. It's like, how did I get exactly here? If I think about that, maybe I can.
My God, what have I done?
Exactly. And you do the dance.
Discussed doing a film, a Monster Party film, where it would be an anthology film, much in the in the template of Vault of Horror or Tales from the Crypt or From Beyond the Grave, where there's individual stories and then there are wraparound stories. And the wraparound story was going to be us doing the podcast, but then we all during the podcast explain a bad nightmare that we had.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's a good frame device. Yeah.
But and then of course by the end we realize we can't leave our studio. Because we're in hell.
Because you've already done I'll just throw a quickie in here. Night Train to Terror is exactly that idea.
Yes.
God and the Devil. It's three.
It's like a pastiche of like 2 or 3 different movies, right?
It was all these movies that Philip Jordan, this blacklisted writer who wrote Johnny Guitar, but he was mostly known for being a front. And at the end of his career, he did Bigfoot movies. He did a lot of crap. And that was reviewed in Psychotronic and The Phantom.
Yeah, it's a famous bad. Like the new stuff is like takes place on a train. It was shot in the 80s.
Yes.
It's like this music video, and it's insane.
Yes, and it has the amazing line, which I think Weldon was the one who did underline, that the lyric, they mock the viewer because everyone's got something to do, everybody but you, and they point in the viewer.
But you.
Which means you're watching
Stuck watching this.
Yeah, you're literally watching 3 unfinished films, one which has Richard Mall when he was younger and has hair. It's like a Suicide Club, and it's literally 3 films that they edited together and have God and the Devil on a train. Yeah,
it's a good party movie.
Well, again, Ed, thank you so much. You are an absolute wealth of information.
This was a delight.
I've had a great time. This has been really lovely.
I think I've mentioned this to Sean and Matt too. That I still have a list. I know you have a list. We're going to have to do cult films.
I would love to do that.
Thank you.
I would love to do that.
Yeah, we got to talk about Waters. We got to talk about John.
Yes,
Waters.
I would love to talk about John Waters. Yes.
So Ed, I know you're a busy guy. What are you working on, or where can we see this stuff?
I do the show weekly. The show is the Media Funhouse, which has been on ad infinitum. We've been on for 27 years. It can be seen. There are clips on YouTube, but you just look up Media Funhouse and you can see the interviews because I own the rights to that.
Cool.
The show itself, I stay on access because unlike YouTube and all the other online platforms, it's fair use. I basically can do whatever I want with the footage, so I can show scenes from any film I ever want.
That's awesome.
It still remains freer. I can show nudity, which you can't even really do all that much on YouTube. So we can basically be
I've tried.
I know it's hard, particularly on the audio, but it's just this weird. So I love Access, and I stay doing it, and we do it every Saturday night, Sunday morning. It's actually on when we're taping. This is a Saturday night, Sunday morning, 1 a.m. on Channel, and I do this recitation at the end of every show. On Spectrum Cable in New York, we're on 1997 if anybody lives in New York, or anywhere around the world that we're on. At the time we're on in New York City, we can be seen around the world on mnn.org on the live stream. And oddly enough, considering the fact that I just said I do blasphemous episodes, we're on the Spirit Channel, Channel 3. So if you go, and it would be 10 o'clock East Coast time, 1 o'clock a.m. West, East Coast time, excuse me. West is 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock East. We are on that particular stream. We can be seen mnn.org, Channel 3, the Spirit Channel. And we can be seen, and definitely I'm also writing for Dish. I do video reviews, and I do a blog. I maintain a blog where I put deceased artiste tributes, which are obits and everything. That's called mediafunhouse.blogspot.com. So
nice.
Fantastic.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I've had a great time. Your choices were all immaculate. I'm even surprised. I don't know what I thought you were going to come up with, but wow, these are really great.
Yeah, this is information, Ed.
We're the real deal.
Yes, no, you guys, it's been really good. And the assortment of it is my whole thing is high art, low trash. I do think there's a weird it's just all the mainstream shit in the middle that I can't stand. It's all the multiplex. It's all those Ron Howard movies, all that stuff. But everything on the fringe.
Clint Howard is a different thing.
Yes, very different. That's very different. Or The Father. Yeah. It's just that weird thing about like high art, low trash. There is some weird connectivity because they are completely unpredictable. You don't know what you're
on
watching.
The fringe. They're just like weird. Yeah.
Yeah. It's somebody who was making something they really had to make as opposed to the mainstream, which is basically, it's got to be 3 hours long. It has Tom Cruise. It's 2.5 hours. It has Denzel. It's 2 hours. It has Tom Hanks. It's 3.5 hours. Scorsese CGI de-aging. I have no. It's not interesting. It just doesn't interest me. It's kind of like negative, interest to it. But thank you so much. Yeah,
well, you are certainly a kindred
Media
spirit.
Funhouse.
Thank you.
And we will watch your show, and please come back again.
Yes, I would love to. I had a great time. Thank you so much.
And let's give it your toast.
Give a toast.
I have a soda, so I can hold up a soda.
A toast to Ed Grant and
Killer
cult film.
Killer cult films.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Time for a listener shout out.
Shout out.
This goes out to Jacob Lee Fulcher from Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, we love
Jacob
him.
Lee Fulcher.
Who purchased not one, but 2 Monster Party t-shirts.
Wow.
Hey.
T-shirts.
Yeah, we should mention that our eBay store is in a kind of a temporary suspension right now because our inventory is nil.
It's pretty much nothing. If you want either a small or a medium female size, we can hook you up.
But the good news is that will be changing soon.
Yes.
So we will keep you posted on that. Also want to shout out to Jim Damon from Fowlerville, Michigan with a congratulations on the birth of his new little girl, Audrey May, born March 15th.
Nice.
Jim says he's looking forward to her first listening experience with us years from now.
Wow.
A future monster kid.
Yeah, raising her right.
Yep.
Also, a quick shout out to Charlie Bonamo, who is actually an NYU alum from about 3 years after I graduated. And we are currently trading tips on customizing action figures.
Nice.
So, Charlie, thanks for reaching out, enjoying the conversation.
Cool.
And thanks for listening.
James, what are you customizing?
Well, a Carl Kolchak from the Old Man Christmas Story figure that NECA made.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Okay. That could work, yeah.
Yeah, other people have done it before. I've seen posts. It does look great when all is said and done. The biggest challenge is the hat. Everything else you can pretty much find, but the hat is a bitch.
How about the suit, the striped suit?
You can get a suit. The striped suit is also practically impossible, but you can get a white suit. So
I want to see figures of every single Kolchak monster made.
Go, James, go.
I would get everyone.
Wow. Now there's a challenge.
I mean, you're at home. You've got time,
Sure. So normally in this place, we would be doing our famous or maybe infamous
raffle,
Monster Party Patreon raffle.
Let's do it.
Well, here's the problem with that. Recently, I was made aware that Patreon does not allow raffles.
No.
How do you like that?
Why?
It's because of the virus, isn't it?
Who knows? I think the problem was that doing a raffle skirts the line of a California law against doing online gambling.
Wow.
Wait,
And
we can do
so-
online gambling?
Well, I mean, I don't consider it gambling.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, it's like saying like a piñata is a gambling,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, what are we going to outlaw piñatas now?
thank
Come on.
you,
Yeah,
thank you very much.
That's so un-American.
I agree completely, but unfortunately, we have to cancel our raffle. However, that does not mean that we won't be doing some sort of extra perk Patreon thing that may involve our new T-shirts that we're getting. And maybe if you buy one, you get some extra goodies.
Oh, gifts.
A little
Wouldn't
extra
that be
sugar.
great? What's that?
Yeah.
What's that, Sean?
A little extra sugar.
A little extra
For the fan.
sugar. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like finding the. it's like
I'm
getting
sorry.
the-
I didn't recognize your hep chat.
It's like getting the extra raisins in Raisin Bran. When you get more raisins, you go, ooh.
There was never enough raisins in Raisin Bran. I'm sorry.
I agree, Sean.
They should have made. They should have made like they made Oops All Berries. They should have made Oops All Raisins.
But you see, every once in a while, you'll do Raisin Bran, and out will come a chunk of raisins. And I'm like, oh,
Because it wasn't just regular raisins. There's like sugar on them. They were like cereal raisins, and they were great. They needed fucking raisins.
I will eat any cereal that starts with oops.
Exactly.
Did you guys ever used to mix cereals, like put in like Cocoa Puffs with Raisin Bran?
No.
I was curious.
I used to do that.
You didn't have to. It was-
Sugar with the healthy.
If you found the right sugar syrup, it was so freaking sugary and like delicious. You didn't have to like do any experimenting. It was just.
I just liked it. I liked having Cocoa Puffs and raisins.
You mix your cereal?
You can just
Cocoa
get
Puffs.
raisins.
Don't get me wrong. I love Cocoa Puffs, but not with raisins. No.
Now, I like the idea of mixing sugary cereals together.
Maybe.
Well, sure.
No,
There's
hey.
always that. Yeah.
Totally
That's-
unrelated, guys. I don't know when the last time you went to the grocery store. Did you know there is a Hershey Kiss cereal?
Really?
It's all Hershey Kisses. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get this.
Did you get it? Did you get it?
No, I haven't got it yet, but I'm going to.
Wow.
No,
That
you
sounds good.
please. No, we need you to do the beta testing of that cereal.
I will do that because I love Hershey Kisses. You know, I put them in the fridge, and now when I saw a whole cereal, I was like, "Oh my God, I gotta get this!" So
That's
it's like
pretty cool.
it's like that little box of donuts, you know, like a whole bunch of chocolate donuts.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
I want a pork chop cereal.
That'd be good.
I don't know about that.
I know. Did anyone ever like grape nuts? I know I probably brought this up before.
Not really.
Oh,
It was like the only thing that they had, and you there's nothing else, and you were starving. Then okay, but
Cover it with
No.
sugar.
Yeah,
you needed a lot of milk because it dried up too soon.
And do you remember?
Wow.
It was always back in the 70s. Hi, I'm the old Gibbons. Let me talk to you about grape nuts.
Old
And
Gibbons,
everything-
right.
Who is
I
this?
can eat a tree.
Yeah,
pine tree? Many parts
exactly.
are edible.
Yes, it was almost like here, have this piece of wood, gnaw on it. You know, that's what I felt like.
Eat
But
this
and
rock.
that's funny too. So you get a guy that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
Who's a little creepy,
Yeah.
and his opening statement to get you to eat his cereal is "ever eat a pine tree."
Well, it's a little bit.
He was the equivalent of the Carvel ice cream guy to me. 'Cause, like,
Oh,
Oh,
John
Cookie Puss
Carvel.
guy.
but it's the voice. The voice though is so not right for like pushing ice cream.
That guy was Greek.
Whatever he
That guy
was.
was
No,
Greek,
it
Tom
wasn't right.
Carvelis. And you realized after a while that all the cake molds were the same.
Yeah,
The Whale of a
exactly.
Dad was the same as Cookie
It
Puss.
was
you
the
know?
whale. It was the
Yeah.
yeah. How did we get?
Damn him.
How the hell did we get on this tangent?
On cereals. So there we go.
Oh, and let's not forget to welcome our new Patreon patrons: Kevin Irvin, Jacob Fulcher, Rich Hurley, Alex Holbrook, our own Joshua Gilliland, and Hans Schroeder, aka Necrodamus. And if you want to become one of our patrons, a true Monster Partier, go to patreon.com, look up Monster Party, click join, and follow the instructions. It'll make you stronger.
And let's remind our listeners that you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Monster Party TV. Our Twitter handle is at Monster Party HQ. Instagram is also Monster Party HQ. And whether you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or wherever you get your favorite podcast, please take a moment and write a review. We would love to hear from you.
Yes, we would.
Yep.
We so would. I totally would. On that note, I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Strothe.
And I'm James Gonis.
Keep America strong.
Join the killer cult of Monster Party. The Sammy Petrillo of podcasts.
Hey, Ed, this is Shawn. I didn't see you in the
Shawn.
past, but how you doing?
That's Shawn.
Oh yeah, there you are.
How's it
Yeah.
going?
Oh my
We
God,
were hiding
the
him the
action
last
figures.
time.
Holy fuck, the action figure! Wow.
The collection.
I went to
behind.
your house years ago and I saw just the one you had a really nice arrangement with your wife.
You did?
Yeah, you did. You did in the living room.
Ed was at your Greenfield place.
I was very impressed. Yeah, but this is
the condo. Oh, I
Yeah.
don't remember that.
Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
understand something about Shawn Sheridan. He
wow.
moves around in a lot of high circles, so
Shit.
people
Yeah.
come and go.
Was it like a
Yeah.
party or something that we had?
No. I just
When did you
brought
come over?
Ed was in town and I brought him over.
Yeah.
It was, I guess, a couple of days before we went to Wally's and Ed interviewed
Yes,
Wally
we
for
did the
his
Wally.
show.
Yeah.
And actually, as we were walking in to your place, Shawn, Matt was walking out. So
Okay.
I briefly got to introduce Ed to Matt for a hot second.
Oh wow.
Okay.
So
Well, yeah,
I want to
before-
see the film version of that, where it's like in
Yes,
slow motion.
Zapruder film. Yeah, it's sort of a
Yeah.
Zapruder thing going on.
That's
Oh, man.
cool.
But
All
that
right.
is funny. But I'm daunted by the action figure. That's amazing.
Well, we all have collections like this. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like, man.
But
I'm
no,
envious.
I mean, I remember being a fan of your show, Ed. I mean, I
Oh,
watched.
thank you.
You interviewed so many amazing people.
Oh, thank
I mean,
you. Thank you.
yeah,
Thanks very
that
much.
was really impressive.
I'm very flattered. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
totally.
God. Yeah. I'm still staring, trying to figure out which ones they are. But I could see the mummy.
We
I
have
recognize
to,
the
yeah.
mummy, but yeah, I
We're
can't.
gonna do we're gonna post some. We all plan to do little video snippets of our collection and post them.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Jesus. Because I was daunted at the time because you and your wife had sort of melted them, and I thought, how romantic.
Yeah.
That's sort of a
Well,
romantic. But
yeah.
that was nothing compared to what you've got behind
Well,
you
now
now.
it's like a
'cause
whole room. Yeah, now it's a
Yeah.
whole room dedicated to that.
Now they meld their anger together.
Yes.
Yes.
Very-
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my God. That's amazing. Jesus. I'm daunted.
Do you collect too? Ed?
I have, but I don't have any room. This is a tiny little, as Jim can attest, this is a tiny little studio. In fact, the guy I got to fix, this guy I just got, and his little hat is not on, but the red, was it the Mask of the Red Death?
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And his
Is it like
arm
a
broke off.
custom figure or something?
This is a sideshow one, but the fucking
Oh.
thing.
Yes.
So I bought this plastic surgery stuff online. And if you guys have any recommendations that are better than this, because it's a clean break, or I don't know how I can repair his hand. I think his hand is just permanently gone. If you guys
I have
any
the smaller like 6 or 8 inch sideshow Mask of Red
Yeah,
Death,
that's a nice one, too.
which is
Oh,
also
okay.
beautiful.
Yeah.
If you're talking about just the hand part of it,
Yeah.
I've had very good luck with just super glue.
Just super glue. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if that works, I mean, whenever I've tried to use those plastic glues, it just never seems to hold. You would think that it would be the best thing possible, and I think sometimes maybe it just requires a very long set time.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, sometimes if it's like not in a really obvious open spot that you can see the break, you can just use a little bit of putty.
Oh, okay.
Something
That's
really
interesting.
super intricate and like hard to glue without making a mess. Just a teeny bit of putty, and
little
if
bit
it's
of
a light
putty.
and small enough piece, you can do that.
That's interesting. Yeah, because this is really surprisingly, because I bought it only for like 50. It was open. It's like 100 or whatever. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
The thing is, it broke so poorly that I don't even know how the glue would adhere because there's not much surface for it to adhere to. So maybe you're talking about that. Yeah, the putty sounds like a good idea.
I just recently opened something that I got from Japan it's not like one of my, prize collection pieces, but I take this figure out and I just bend the arm and it just goes.
Oh no! Wow.
But to me, I'm like, but to me, it was like the way this whole toy is set up. There's different hands and different arms and things, so it could be. You wouldn't notice it at all when I was playing it. But it was one of those things where it's just like, yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Oh man. The only thing I have even similar to that, it's one of my family memories, was my dad was getting me into the Comic Cons. We went to the Phil Seuling Comic Cons, and he was always into the Spirit and trying to get me to read, Will Eisner's Spirit. We ordered these 40s comics, and they were so cheap. They were like $2 to $3 to $5 back in the 70s. We ordered them, and as we take them out, you probably have had this experience if you ever bought pulps or anything, they literally started to shed and flake. And we realized we better read it right now, like in the next 5 minutes, we're going to read this comic, because this comic no longer exists except for the cover. We were able to put the covers in a bag.
Right.
It's very, very Buddhist.
Oh, it's just, it literally was the last. It was like a mummy movie with the hieroglyphics. Like literally, this is the last time anyone was ever going to read this comic.
He was the
That's
Spirit.
why it was so cheap. Yeah. Actually, yes, very good. And it was like, why was it so cheap? It's like, it's so cheap because it's in the abominable condition. And that was
Right.
I'm going to clean
it was funny,
the screen.
Larry. I think it was Larry. I remember you pointing out to me there was the guy who fixes action figures, and he was this guy online, a British guy, and he was describing how when it comes to making toys, that toys aren't really made to last. And so when you get a figure and it starts to have that kind of oily feel on it, that's the plastic degrading. And there's nothing you can really do about that. You can wipe it off and clean it, but most likely it'll come back.
What was great, the big main point about this is when I discovered this and I watched it, I was horrified, because basically he was saying, I mean, chemically, all of this plastic and all this stuff, none of it will withstand the test of time. Like in 10,000 years, I'm not going to still have a sealed Star Wars figure in a package. Eventually,
Dude, you are the ultimate optimist.
This is
So I sent the link to these guys. I'm saying, oh my God, my life is now changed.
But what I loved is the fact that I liked his attitude about it, which is like, okay, do you want a broken figure in a package, or do you want to take it out of the package, fix it, and then display it? And to me, that's where I live.
Okay.
And he had all these great tips about if you have faded plastic, how to bring back its luster. And I just love that stuff, because it's like it's a project. There's never been a better time, certainly.
I think it's important. I had friends who just collected comics. I had one friend back in Jackson Heights who just collected comics for their monetary value, and he put them in bags, and he had a full set. And whenever I'd be into a title, I'd say, can I even buy them off you? Can I get like 5? And it was like, no, he had the full set, and he never fucking read them. And it was just like, I can't even abide. I had a girlfriend who had gay friends who had a set of books that were bought for the binding, because the binding fit the room. It was one of those kind of deals where they bought books like of classics. So it was like Dickens and Proust and stuff they're never going to read, but because the binding fit the wallpaper. And I was just like, I can't even conceive of that, because all these books, at least I've opened. If I haven't read a million of them, at least I've looked at them.
If you're going to do that, why not do then just the fake bookcase?
Yeah. Just like something
open and goes to another room.
You could put you could have the empty ones where they put guns or they put powder, or Jerry Lewis supposedly had cocaine in his gun. Jerry Lewis is a whole other. If you ever want to talk Jerry Lewis, I've talked Jerry Lewis for hours.
Oh my God, you're talking to the right guy.
Yeah,
I'm a Jerry Lewis freak.
I have a Jerry Lewis, I did a blog entry when he died of all of the nasty things he had done. And then it kind of got, because I went back to my library and I was looking through all the books, the Arthur Marx book and stuff. There were many, many more that I had no idea, because suddenly things started to come out about his family, that the first wife still alive. And it was like, he decided he wanted to screw her so bad, he claimed he was bankrupt when he divorced her and married Sandy when he did Hardly Working. So he literally had a way to say, I've got millions of dollars, but I don't have the millions of dollars. He suddenly took it away and said, he declared Chapter 11, so he didn't have to pay child support, because I think one kid was under 18, and he didn't have to pay for his wife, who's still alive. Patty's still alive, by the way. She's in an institution. She's got Alzheimer's.
How do you get to that place where you're just so filled with hate and
He's a horrible human being. He was just an amazingly horrible guy.
Know? Do you really want to know?
Do we want to go there?
How you get there?
That is true. That is like...
It's amazing to me, because it's like I always consider him sort of like the comedy Shatner in a sense of we know there's a dark side. And
but you can't help watching him. You can't help
watching him and his talent. I mean, he really was like a powerhouse. And then you go back to Colgate Comedy Hour. You see him playing off a Dean, and you just like, man, this is pure magic.
But he also had so much power and clout at some point. Like when he was making those movies on his own, what was the movie where they built an entire set of an apartment building?
Ladies Man. Ladies Man. It's the dollhouse.
That was this huge experimental, expensive movie that Hollywood let him make because he's Jerry Lewis.
Video assist. I mean, there's so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like literally in that film, because that is why the French love him. I have the thousands of things I've talked about. I have French magazines. When I was in Paris, I was buying anything with Jerry Lewis on it. And basically, he loves that set so much in Ladies Man that he pulls back too far, as you would say in the industry, and shows the rafters. So at various points, you can see that it is a constructed set. So the French are like, mon Dieu, he's actually done something reflective of because he was so proud of his set, he'd go all the way back and you'd see the rafters. And it's like, you're not really supposed to do that.
What is reality?
Who's going to tell him that?
Reality?
Exactly. It's like, and who's ever going to tell him? In The Big Mouth, George Takei is in it, but he's supposed to be a Japanese dude who quotes Confucius. And I had the feeling there must have been someone on the set who said,
he's just
Confucius. Yeah, he does like a kabuki. They have Jerry Lewis doing kabuki, and then they quote Confucius. And I'm sure someone said to Jerry somewhere, Confucius is Chinese and this is all Japanese. But I'm sure that person was fired.
You don't care.
Like literally, goodbye.
No. Look up Gook.
Yes. Yes. When he said, do you see the moment when he said fag on the air on the telethon when he referred to some guy's son? Yes. It was like, and you even saw it register on his face, like, I'm going to have to apologize for this. I can't believe, because that obviously was something he just said very easily.
What did he say? Well, how did he say?
He was referring to a guy's son, and he goes, and you fag son. And then there was that moment, like, oh, he realized, like, this is 19, or whatever it was, 2010 or something, whatever it was.
You can't do that anymore. Well, I've seen him a couple times live. And towards the end, where he's in a wheelchair.
Oh, just sitting.
And he's sitting there and he does the typewriter gag. And that was fun. And then he does like his opening monologue, which is like, I wonder how Chinese people name their kids.
Oh, ching chong ding dong. Yes.
Up in the air ding dong bong bong.
Yes. The racist jokes, the Polak jokes. Like, it's amazing because he had an Italian audience when I saw him, and he didn't want to make fun of the Italians. He never makes fun of African Americans, but he will do Polak, and he would just go Polak, da 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 da. And it's like, geez, Jerry, and they're just elemental, like dumb guy jokes, it's like,
I'm just curious. Normally when we do these shows, we usually put some of our pre-show banter at the end.
Oh, okay.
Are you cool with that? Is that cool?
If you want to have this discussion to Jerry Lewis, what do you mean, like other stuff?
No. I mean, a lot of times we go off on tangents anyway.
Yeah, stuff we just talked now. We'll just put it in.
Oh, sure, if you want to.
Okay,
I've done like a million Jerry Lewis episodes, so I become.
Oh my God!
I literally read. Well, because I've been trying to find new stuff because there is no new stuff. Did you guys see the Julian auction? Because I didn't even do a blog entry.
No.
When Julian's auction house sold his stuff, it was like $100 to buy the book. So I didn't buy the book, but I collected, and I could send them to you in a little folder if you just anybody remind me or get my email. There's all the pictures that were taken of his possessions because the wife and daughter wanted done with him. They wanted to get rid of everything Daddy had. They got rid of his house. They got rid of his Legion of Honor award, which you're not legally allowed. It belongs to the government of France.
They hated him too.
They really wanted to get clearly, and they got all the money.
His
Sandy and the second wife and the daughter, Danielle, who was named after his stunningly untalented dad. But there were 73 guns, and they gave you pictures of Jerry 73. We counted, my friends and I, 73. There were the only thing I wanted were the lighters with Jerry's famous caricature and watches. There was his novelty props. This is something I don't know where you go on, like talking about racist comedians, but he had what they call his novelty props. And what they were his Chinese teeth and his little yarmulke, the Chinese yarmulke. And then he basically, the best thing they had, and nobody could afford it, my friends and I were saying we should all buy it and share it and put it in each of our apartments every week, is a oil painting of Jerry Lewis and JFK behind children with wheelchairs looking sad for them. It's this amazing thing in like green. It's a study in green. I can send you a copy of the JPEG.
Did he have in his office, I was told that this existed, like a framed picture of a white hand and a black hand shaking?
That I don't think. Well,
enough said.
Wow. That's amazing. That was an act that Slappy White used to do. That's on one of the last Dean Martin roasts, because they have the box. I had to review the box, and I got it for free, thankfully, because I'd never be able to buy that. Slappy White used to do a thing where he'd wear a white and a black glove, and he would do a whole thing. And what happens on that show is they invited Dick Shawn on to mock it. Dick Shawn comes on with a red glove and a blue glove, and he goes, "These are the gloves of the American Indian," and whatever. And he does an exact parody of Slappy White's ongoing bit about the white and the black man to get together. Because Slappy White's bit is not funny. It's supposed to be about racial solidarity. Dick Shawn's out of his mind. And Dick Shawn just does this piece where you're like, holy fuck, how does that? If someone tuned in late, they don't know what he's doing at all. It was like
two different flavors of wrong.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It was just like, wow. So anyway, so yeah, if you want to
great. No, we need to do a Jerry Lewis episode now and have you back because I just to talk about which way to the front.
Yes. Oh,
that's another good half hour right there.
Yeah. People keep thinking we're going to find the day the clown cried and it's going to be good. It's not going to be good. It's going to be horrible, but not in the way we want it to be.
It'll be horrendous.
It's going to be beautifully horrible.
Well, we hope.
Curiosity.
Yeah, I think it's going to be bad because when they did it with the good dubbing, it was like it actually looks competently shot. It's just in bad taste. So if you had other people dubbing it, Jerry's voice is not on the version where they have little scenes, and it looks like it's just a very mediocre melodrama. I don't think we're going to get what we're hoping for, the ultimate camp movie.
Yeah,
I would love that, but I don't know. So.
I understand there's a print that exists.
They keep saying that, there's a friend of a friend who said he had what I think it probably was the video system edited together. Like there is a VHS supposedly he would lend to people. I don't know.
No, I think this had to do with when the film was. I mean, they made a print of it. The film was actually.
So it was completed.
Maybe not to the point of completed where it's like a final print, but there was a print that existed, and there was a guy supposedly in Hollywood who had the print that for a large amount of money would screen it to people, and they had a projector. So
I heard Harry Shearer saw it.
Yes, he's talked about it over the years. Yeah. The weird thing is when they perform it, they do it tongue-in-cheek. I've seen the performances. They did them here in New York, and it's David Cross and Patton Oswalt. And the only objection I had to it was you just should leave it alone because on its own, it's hysterically awful. It's just also because they're reading Jerry's notes. The only really parenthetical thing you need is someone to read Jerry's own handwritten notes in the version of the script that's gotten out. But otherwise, it was weird because they performed it at high key, and they were making fun of it. And it's like, no, there's a guy from Mr. Show guy. There's a tall guy from Mr. Show. I can never remember his name. He played Helmut Dork, and he was phenomenal. Actually, they had a little gathering afterwards.
Brian Posehn?
No, not him. I know him. He has a beard. It's another tall guy who was on Mr. Show a lot, and he chose.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
you know that guy. Yeah, he did a great job because he didn't camp it up. Even David Cross in his narration was camping it up. This was literally a guy just playing Helmut Dork, the sad clown, and he was absolutely perfect. And he didn't try to do joke it up or anything. That's But it's like the more they joke it up, the more. It seems like
someday all this stuff will find its way to
Hey, so what do we decided on?
All right, what are we calling?
What's the topic? Yes, what's the topic? Yeah. What is the topic?
Jerry Lewis and films that we should try
Jerry
to
Lewis
see.
and Friends.
Is it?
Yes. Oh my God.
Attack of the Killer Cult Films or Cult Flicks, or is that too long, or is that fine?
Sure.
Or Killer Cult Flicks, or whatever.
James, chime in.
Well, I mean, my thing of Attack of the Killer Cult movies or Attack of the Killer Cult films was because of Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, and it's just a play on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. Attack of the Killer.
Do we all like that?
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Attack of the Killer Cult movies.
Of the Killer Cult films.
Films.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like films better than movies.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I tend to be highfalutin, so I put in film, but it's like what I'm talking about sometimes. When I want to put down Ron Howard, I'll say he makes movies, or somebody who's mainstream. I say, that's because that's the whole thing I do on the show with the high and the low is those people are making films because they have a vision, and the people who just make works for hire are doing movies. That's basically
it's true.
The real Americans,
yes,
real filmmakers.
Yes, the people who have a vision, whether it's a good vision or a shit vision, they had a vision somewhere in there.
So. At least there was a vision. Right?
There was something. They were doing something. Yeah, somebody said yes, he did, definitely did. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
So the man who made.
Well, I am actually going to take a bathroom break since we haven't started. I will do this.
We'll all yell at each other now.
So Ed, just if you've heard the show, so basically what we do is Matt's going to introduce the show. He introduces us. We say what the topic is.
Sure.
And then we're going to introduce you. James, are you going to be introducing Ed?
Yep. That'll be me.
And you got a nice little build.
Yes. Name first.
Dramatic.
Name first, and then credits. Right.
No. Name last. Name last. And so
build up to the name.
And be sure to mumble.
Yes.
And so Ed, the other thing is after he introduces you, we start to get to it. We'll each of us will get an opportunity to talk about something.
Sure.
And then at the end, we'll say, is there anything you're working on? And you can pitch your show, whatever. We just want to hear you.
Anything you got going on, any projects.
Like just for our listeners, how can they see or watch what you do? Okay,
cool.
And I know you guys like to do this thing where we go and we all take turns, but it seems like Ed has such a great amount of knowledge in his head that it'd be nice if we can bounce a little bit at the same time too.
Sure, of course.
And go first too with our first one too.
Yeah, here's one where
what was that, Sean?
I was going to say we should let Ed go first as well when we start.
Yes.
Titles.
No, that'd be great.
Sure.
So,
James, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I don't really need the taking turns thing on this one. I've got a few titles, but it's not like, this can be a little bit more free form if you want.
and I still don't mind doing the turns. I just want it to I know what will happen here, and we'll get to this place where we start talking and we'll have fun. And I'd hate to, tamp down the fun so we can get to a turn. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. I
let it breathe.
But James, don't let freeform mean that you shouldn't be contributing.
Well, that's a very good point. Yes,
James, as usual, you should jump in.
He's the quiet man.
Contribute, especially for this one.
Yes.
and feel free to say, "Hey guys,"
Yeah.
get our attention so you can put something in.
Yeah, because I got lots of titles.
Right, like what Larry's doing there. Perfect. Do a lot of waving, but but seriously, because I know that I know, James, I know whatever you've got is bonkers.
It
doesn't fit in this category. So I want to hear this.
I think he saw some of the ones I was going to mention. I don't know if I should wait until I say the titles, but I think we at least saw Tough Guys Don't Dance Together. I think we might have seen Lady Beware. I don't know if you saw that one. I have a few of them where I wanted to mention.
Bring him up.
Because I think when he was back in New York, we saw a few, maybe not a lot, but a few of them together. So,
and I did bring up Tough Guys on the show, but very briefly, so that's worth more discussion. So please do bring that up.
A couple times that we briefly, peripherally mentioned, but not.
Yeah.
And get ready from me for a lot of Asian titles.
Okay,
nice.
That's cool.
Because we almost never talk about Hong Kong stuff.
Oh, okay.
And there's so much great stuff, and maybe we can sort of sprinkle some of that in here, and then maybe one day down the line, if I lend you all my videos, we can do a Hong Kong.
Oh episode. I used to do when that was a thing. We had Jim and I had a friend named Joe Chan who was literally introducing our friends to this stuff, and they were trying to rip it off for Hollywood. These scripters that we both know, were desperately trying to look through John Woo movies and say that plot, we can steal that plot. And it was this weird thing where around 86, 7, and then of course 8, 9, 1990, he was introducing us to the Woo and the Choi Hark and stuff. So it was like this kind of, we were discovering it when it was still down in Chinatown and it was making its way to the village.
There was one theater down there that showed them double features.
Yeah. And
I found a website where I had to mail them a copy of my ID.
Wow.
Or fax it to them or something like that. And then from that point on, I could order all kinds of videos. And I bought boxes of them because the more you got, the cheaper they were.
Remember the Wild West days where you just order something through a magazine, and you usually
will it come? Will it not? I don't know.
Yeah. It was weird because the places in Chinatown were openly, because Kim's was the only place that was famous in New York City for renting bootlegs in a city where you could find people who might have produced them. One store almost got busted named Evergreen, but the stores down on Bayard Street in Chinatown would just have blank videotapes with laserdiscs on them. They would dub the laserdisc to video, or they'd have the very old ones. I can't even remember what the company name was, but those ones you knew not to have, unless you just want to watch something with no subtitles, because they had very old VHSs with no subtitle. They were comedies that Sammo Hung made, and all these,
the Twinkle Little Star.
Yes, those ones. My Lucky Star. Yeah, where they'd have
My Lucky Stars.
There's a lot of Chow Yun-Fat embarrassing shit he did early in his career. He did a Vietnamese soap opera, and there's all this weird shit they used to have on video. But if you got it from the blank tapes, you knew it was going to have subtitles. So it was my God.
But when it comes down to classics, there's Sammo Hung, which I'm going to bring up. Spooky Encounters. It's about as good as it gets. I mean,
tell me about that one, Matt.
It's a magnificent movie. Anyway, let's start this. Shall we?
All right. Let's do it.
This is good. This is excellent. This is a good. This is another one. This is another one we can easily do 17 more volumes of.
Sean, I would
love to do the Hong Kong one if you guys.
I
lend you a bunch of. I have
if you can
so many of these films.
Ones, I would be because I know. I know. I've seen Encounters of the spooky kind. I haven't seen the Weapons of China one, but all the ones, especially the ones that are more fantasy horror, would be like to get.
Well, there's a series of films called Swordsman.
Yes,
and I'm sure you're familiar with all these. There's a trilogy, and the first Swordsman is okay, but the second one, which features a very young Jet Li, and there's a million different fantasy sequences and using your chi to create a martial arts event. And there's one where a guy does a thing with his chi, and there's you see a little rumbling on the ground, and the chi splits a horse in half.
Matt, I saw that in the movie theater.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I actually saw it in San Francisco. It was playing at a movie theater. And I was told about this. Is when I worked at special effects studio. They said, you guys have got to see it. And we all went as a group.
I like the one. I mean, I like martial arts films too, but I like the fantasy and horror elements when they're
me too. And if you're looking for, this isn't really a fantasy one, but if you've never seen the film Feng Sai Yuk, which
you told about it. Yeah.
And that's kind of it's more of a martial arts comedy, but there's a scene in that movie that has been copied, and I think even an episode of Xena.
I think I know. Yeah, on top of those pillars, on top of
people's heads.
Oh yeah, the heads. Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, you're right. I remember that.
Great movie.
When we did the first show, Jim did the first show where I didn't have a partner, because I had a partner at one point for only like 2 or 3 months. And Jim did a show where we could not stop laughing because I was showing self-published books. We did Doris Wishman on that show too in Double Age of 73. But there's one book written by a woman who met Judy Garland in the afterlife. That's an example of the kind of stuff. It was My Life Over the Rainbow, written by Judy Garland after she died. It starts with death.
Okay, that's
you know. So but then there was one where he couldn't close in without laughing, and I couldn't then do the piece, which was The Sinuses in Me, a memoir, and it was about a sinus doctor, and he had old photos of early 20th century children putting like funnels up their noses to drain stuff out, and he put below it a little caption that said, "Children ask for it," or "Children love it," or something like that. And it was just impossible to see without laughing over and over.
This was a book publisher. It was Vantage, right?
Vantage Press. You remember?
And you could. This was a vanity book publisher. You could pay to publish your own book.
$5,000. Yeah, it was $5,000. It was a lot of money, and
way before the whole self-publishing.
It was a total ripoff because you would never sell. They had 2 authors who sold. The 2 authors who sold are famous. Actually, the third one was a guy who hated FDR, and he wrote a nasty, "I hate the New Deal." He hated the New Deal. But the 2 authors who were famous, who you've both heard of, and one of them, the Friedman brothers, got a copy somehow. Leo Gorcey, his actual memoir was self-published by Vantage Press.
I would bet that would be fascinating to read.
That's the one where he's got the apocalyptic poem that Drew Friedman drew the thing of Leo Gorcey going, like at the end of their book, Warts and All. You'll see.
Yeah.
That's from that book. It's called like Cockle Shells and Dead End Memories.
I wish somebody would do a movie or a book or something on the Bowery Boys. Just like
I think there's one like trade, but there's one that's
there's like
the films
a guidebook
of.
to the film. I mean, like the real story about them. And
it would be interesting because Leo was a big drunk. Yeah, Leo supposedly they was the only Vantage author who they got on Carson. They got him on Carson was in New York, and I said, "Did you ever get any of these people on major talk shows? Like, did you get them beyond Joe Franklin?" And he said, "Yeah, we got Leo Gorcey on Johnny Carson, and he was drunk on the air, and it was very embarrassing."
But I heard at the time he was like one of the biggest paid stars.
Oh, in the 50s, this was in the 60s when he wrote the book.
Movies that they were all those Bowery Boys, he was making tons of money on them.
Yeah, he was because they were made for such little money. And the other author was Evita Perón, wanted an English publisher for her. Was it Argentinian memoir? So she was, and I said, "Do you have these on premises? Because I'd like to see both books," and they didn't have them by the time we were doing. Also, I did 2 episodes with Jim about Godzilla. We did, and Jim left the stuff at my house. It was the only time I never stole from a friend, but he left. There were 2 things I so wanted. One was the super deformed Ben Cooper-ish mask of super deformed Godzilla, and one was a children's book that you could spin the dial and it would make the voices of different monsters.
It was a CNC, yeah.
For Godzilla, really?
And I was
insane.
in front of the camera for those 2 shows instead of behind the camera.
He was on camera.
But was the CNC the real recordings of the monster sounds?
Yeah.
Really? That's great.
I still have it.
Was it a Japanese toy?
Oh.
It's a Japanese toy?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like one of my prized possessions.
I have never, I never steal from a friend, but I was like, oh God, if he dies in a car crash, I was just like,
another Vantage book I remember you showing me, you probably did on the show, is that someone went around the world taking pictures of urinals.
Oh yes, all the toilets of the world. Yes, she took pictures of. It was called Toilets. It was exclamation point. Yes.
Nah.
She did it amazing. She also there was
publisher.
This was advantage. Yeah, they had like and this is stuff I didn't. Did I go into this on the stuff? They had also people who tried to write sex books, and one was a woman who wrote a thing called Tongue House, and it was about
I like the title.
it was about a woman giving head to the repairman, and she actually asked us because we had a deal when I worked there. I was in publicity. We would send it to any filmmaker you wanted, or send a copy to any critic you wanted, like the New York Times. Of course, it was never going to appear in there. They never, unless it was Leo Gorsi or Vita Perrone. But in that case, she asked us, I want you to send it to Hollywood. She gave us a few directors. I can't remember the directors, but I remember her casting was Paul Williams should write the song. Speaking of Phantom of the Paradise.
Wow.
Of course.
She wanted it to be a musical. She wanted, was it Shelley Winters to play her? Because it was really her own sex fantasies. This was a woman writing her own, under a pseudonym, of course. And she had a whole cast. Dustin Hoffman should be the gas man. Like there were different men who come in the house that she services. There was another book written by a woman who was a nurse about how she was annoyed that teenagers were having too much sex. So she wanted to create a homemade chastity belt by sewing up their vaginal wall. And it was this thing that was so the man wrote it. You assumed it had to be a man because it's so sexist. It was a nurse. I looked up because I had the right to go into the files. And I was like, that was written by a woman. She was a real nurse, and she called it a sutured Tales of Daring Mayhem on Young Women or something like that. Wow. And it was a lamentation that kids were having too much sex, and we could stop this if we just sew up the girls' vaginas. And it was like, and there was the other one, the last sex one, which was unbelievable, was An Arm and a Leg or Two, or Le Bal de Venus de Milo. And it took place, it was a sci-fi thing in which we go to a place. Now, this fetish I have not even seen on the internet in the world of the furries and all the other weird fetishes. This man wanted women to have no arms and no legs. No. Torsos. So you go to this place in Switzerland and they shrink your arms and legs. And I ended up reading it on the subway and laughing out loud.
What do you mean they shrink them? What do you mean?
Well, because he wants a woman who's a torso. He really doesn't want a woman to have any arms or legs because he feels she's ultimate if she's just a torso.
Yeah.
So he wrote a line that just literally made me burst out laughing in the subway, which was, "It was my dream come true, a room full of armless and legless women." And then he puts an M dash and he goes, "Except for the waitresses who carried the drinks." So in his world, women still had to have arms to carry, but otherwise women do not need arms, they do not need legs, because he was giving an argument that they're easier to fuck when they don't have legs. And it was just like this, it was absolutely like a pathology. It wasn't just a fetish. It was actually, as you read it, you go, okay, like I got it here, buddy.
Tonight's topic.
Yeah, I know. And it makes the furries look innocent because they just, we're
yeah. Hey, Ed, how much of this can we put on the end of our episode?
Yeah. I don't know how much of this you want. It's like those Vantage books drove me insane. I was so happy about them. There was one.
Larry just left.
Where are you going, Larry?
Oh, did he go?
Had enough.
He just left. He went to the bathroom. But yeah, there was one where the guy was an African American who had written about a dystopic novel where everything blows up, and he had an amazing passage which I did try to read on the show without laughing, which was, "Don't be biting on my dick, bitch." It was this whole thing where the woman bites down, and otherwise the novel was written in a very third person, and then the bomb dropped. It was his version of Failsafe, or one of those apocalyptic novels. He asked us to send it to Robert Townsend, Spike Lee, and who was the third? Whoever was the other big, John Singleton, whoever was the other big African American filmmaker. And we actually did do that because we had the addresses of the major studios.
I'm sure you gave them a big laugh.
Yes, if anybody even opened it, I'm sure they just got thrown, but those were the last one I got that was really good was from Pimp Stick to Pulpit, where this one guy went into, he's now a preacher, but he used to be a pimp, and he had a glossary at the back of pimp terms.
Preacher by day, pimp by night.
Pimp by night, yeah, it's like Betsy Russell. And he literally gave an entire rating of his fellow pimps from the old days. So clearly this man of God still had one foot in the pimp world, because he rated one guy, Jojo. He was not a serious pimp. Like, he would give little ratings. This guy was an A+ pimp. This guy was a D level pimp. He was terrible. So
sorry, I had to take care of some business after I was talking about women with no arms and no legs. I'm sorry. I'm back.
Now, for me, it was instead of having the woman sewing up vaginas, how about a drawbridge?
I like that. I like that with a moat. I like that very much.
And before we forget, let's welcome our new Patreon patrons: Kevin Irvin, Jacob Fulcher,